That one. Okay, it's 12:30, so we are going to get started. If everyone would like to take a seat, we will call the commission or committee to order. Hello. We're trying to do official business over here.
There we go, 12:30, let's go.
Thank you. It was 12:30 already prior to that. So, first thing we are going to do, call to order. We will do the roll call, Mr. Westerson.
All right. Councillor Milton Hope.
Of course I'm here.
Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
Here.
Councillor Carlson.
Present.
He's outside again.
And Councillor Croson.
I am here as well.
You have quorum, and no other members of council have joined us.
All right, moving on to our acknowledgement statement. The City of Lethbridge acknowledges that we are gathered on the lands of the Blackfoot people of the Canadian Plains and pays respect to the Blackfoot people past, present, and future while recognizing and respecting their cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationship to the land. The City of Lethbridge offers respect to the Métis and all who have lived on this land and made Lethbridge their home. Moving on to the adoption of the agenda, we have a motion from Councillor Middleton Hope. Be it resolved that the June 26, 2025 agenda of the Governance Standing Policy Committee meeting be adopted as presented. And just before you bring the motion forward, just a reminder that we do have two confidential items, but they are linked to some of the submissions. So we'll do the confidential items with the submissions that they are connected to instead of doing them separately. If that works for everybody, that's how we'll do the agenda.
What does that look like?
So when we get to No, we will be going in and out, but we'll be going in and out connected to the submission. So when we get to 6.7, we will do 7.1. And so we'll connect them up so that they're not separate from the item that's on the public agenda.
Okay. And they're only at the end of the agenda?
Well, one goes with 6.7 and one goes with 6.4. So they're backwards from how we'll actually be doing them. We'll be doing 7.2 when we get to 6.4, and we'll be doing 7.1 when we get to 6.7.
Okay. And that's necessary, I take it?
I think it makes more logical sense. Councillor Carlson, do you have something to add before the motion?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I think it is logical, but I think we'll only go in camera sort of on what John or Councillor Middleton Hope was saying is if committee wants to. We've read all the documents. Yes, excellent.
Yes. Just the agenda items will be there, but we will see if we need to go in based on the questions and the concerns.
Good.
All right, Councillor Middleton Hope.
Good, so we can call a question.
Question's been called. All in favor? And we have unanimously adopted our new agenda. Yay, pretty agenda. Moving on to the consent agenda, I have a motion from Councillor Carlson. Be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee, 1, approve the minutes of the Governance Standing Policy Committee meeting held on May 22nd, 2025, and authorize the Chair and City Clerk Designate to sign the same. And 2, receive for information the status of directed resolutions for June 26, 2025. Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I reviewed the minutes. I didn't see anything, but if my colleagues have any questions,
I see no questions.
then I would call for the vote. Thank you.
Questions have been called. All in favor? And we adopt the consent agenda unanimously. Moving on, we have no presentations. They are all submissions. 6.1 is Bylaw 6476, amending Bylaw 5969, Lethbridge Police Commission Bylaw. So, Mr. Faust, is there anything high level you want to tell us about this before we see if there's a community who wants to speak to it and have our questions asked? Oh, somebody needs to get him a red light. Oh, wrong podium.
Oh, there we go.
There you go.
I'll just quickly summarize it as there's no presentation. This is fairly high level. This comes back from a request February 2023 from the Lethbridge Police Commission, which was then sent to administration to have a look at the bylaw as well, pending Police Act amendments. The amendments came out in 2024 and were pretty inconsequential for our day-to-day operations with the Police Commission. The amendments to the bylaw really update the language and update the terms to reflect what happens in reality and brings it up to the modern times. The only real substantive change that I would say is really to Section 2 with regards to membership, and it tries to offer some clarity and flexibility to achieve the goal of hopefully having a somewhat stable number of members on the commission.
Okay, thank you for that. I am going to push back, though, because I had a motion in my first term of council to have this bylaw amended, and the things I wanted to have looked at are not necessarily looked at here, including what is cause. We do not have a definition of cause. Did you at any time have a chance to look into what is cause? Because I know Tabor Police Commission bylaw, when I looked at it years ago, actually listed what cause were, or gave some understanding of it, so there could be others. And the concern was, yes, we know we can ask for members of commission to be removed with cause, but we did not actually talk about what cause might be. What are you seeing in other police commission bylaws related to cause? Now, I'm going to just stop there because I forgot one thing. Since we've introduced this onto the agenda, is there any member of the community here to speak to this member? I kind of have an idea who all is in the audience, so I was assuming, oh, no, Ms. Paquette, you're hiding behind. Are you here to speak to it or just to answer questions if necessary? Okay, perfect. We have all that room in the audience and you chose to hide yourself. Well, welcome very much to this. You may get questions now that we know you are here and we have the chair of the police commission in the room. So, Mr. Faust, did you have any opportunity to look at that, or was that part of this review at all?
We did look at the section with regards to cause and whether or not that was required or not. And the tricky part with that section is the Police Act is specific with regards to council can only remove a member with cause. Now, regardless of how or if we tried to elaborate or limit cause, it wouldn't necessarily stand if it gets to judicial review and it's determined, no, this is also included in cause, because the Police Act is so broad. So we can't necessarily narrow the broadness of the Police Act. The Police Act will reign supreme.
Okay, so would I be correct in assuming that cause is the same for basically employees? Would that be appropriate in this case, as long as we understood that? Or is it the same as for volunteers? Or is it, so what is the guidance that can be provided for people who might have an issue and are wondering whether or not there is cause to remove a member? Not that we have needed to, but it is a concern.
And if we wanted to do a deep dive with a legal opinion, I think we could provide that, but generally it would be a breach of their duty. So if they've breached confidentiality.
Conflict of interest?
And I would say, depending upon the level, because they're all going to be fact dependent, that could be grounds. It'll depend upon the severity.
Okay, and would cause be, we have, the last couple of chairs have done a much better job. We are seeing annual plans. We're seeing things that we didn't for a decade. But would cause be not actually doing what is required of them as per the bylaw?
It could be, but I think, and again, it's all fact dependent. The difficulty there is that you'd have to tie it likely to individuals. Like, because if someone's not doing something because agendas are busy or they're running out of time or it's just not front and center, then there may not be enough to establish cause.
Okay.
And that's the tricky part with trying to establish a list, because it's so fact dependent.
So it's just a warning for anybody who puts people on committees, way easier to appoint them than to remove them.
When it comes to police commission,
Or
yes.
any committee, really. Okay, thank you. All right, Councillor Middleton Hope, your turn.
Thank you. I have a few issues, Mr. Faust. To begin with, this section 2, what's the rationale behind requesting an increase in the police commission size? This has been problematic. There are issues that have been identified by the GOA across the province in regards to the expansion of police commissions in terms of the numbers. So I'm certainly interested to determine why, although this is permissible, I understand that it's not advisable. So why are we going ahead with this as a recommendation?
From my understanding discussions, the logic is to aim for a specific target. So let's say it's 9 members. We've worded it in a way that it is permissible to go up to 9. So the trouble is the Police Act lists different thresholds for how many members the province can appoint. If the council appoints 1 to 3 members, province can appoint 1. If council appoints 7 to 9, then they could appoint up to 3. we've tried to factor that potential in so that if we know that province wants to appoint 2 members, then maybe council's only going to appoint 7, and then we get to 9. But the hard part with it is that the Police Act allows the province to appoint up to 50, so that the commission goes up to 15 members as long as they don't cross the 50% threshold. So this wording is permissible to try and give council and the police commission some semblance of flexibility to keep it at a number, but understanding there's no guarantee that we're going to be able to do that.
So are you anticipating that the government of Alberta is looking at appointing enough members such that the police commission would be at 15?
Well, and I have no anticipation.
Good.
I'm just saying that the Police Act potentially allows them to.
So how does this remedy that?
So the wording of this is that it's not that council has to appoint 7 members, 6 members. It's that council can appoint up to 9 members with the hopes that if we've historically always had 2 provincial appointments, then council can appoint commission members to keep us at that level, anticipating.
What level are you talking about? A ratio of provincial appointments to municipal appointments?
I'm talking about total commission members, because the hard part with the ratio is the province has the ability to kind of throw that out of whack with their ability to continually add members as long as they don't go above 50%.
Okay. You're not convincing me, but that's okay. I'll move on to the next question. Section 30. Nowhere, so this one is the initial appointment of the chief of police is subject to ratification by city council. I brought this up on more than one occasion. It has not been dealt with by this review, which is that there is nowhere in any of the amendments any contemplation of the council being responsible also ultimately for approving the renewal of a chief of police. Why is that?
And that's because it is explicit in the Police Act that council is only obligated to authorize.
It's actually mute in regards to renewal.
Well, and so the Police Act specifically states that council has to authorize the initial appointment.
Correct, but it is mute on the renewal.
And I do take your point in that it's silent as to whether or not renewals need to be appointed.
Right. So I've raised this before, and I've asked that the Police Commission consider this. Has the Police Commission thoroughly considered this in terms of the renewal of the chief? We are responsible for, and the reason that I make an issue of it is because there are financial implications to any contract that any one of our BCCs engage. This has a potential impact, and we're not talking about just $5,000 or $10,000. We're talking sometimes lots of money. So there are financial impacts, and I'm just wondering if this was something that was actually contemplated as we went through the process.
We'd have to ask someone on the commission, and I know that the bylaw revisions were sent back to the commission for their review and input, especially because of the lag of when they first brought it in 2023 to now, to make sure that, is this still what you want to ask for? Are there additional revisions?
Yeah, I'm just thinking.
Thank you, but you asked if there was somebody from the commission, and Councillor Schmidt-Rempel is on the commission as our rep and does have a response to that.
Well, we also have the chair of the commission too.
I know, but we will get this one, and then if it's not sufficient, we'll ask Ms. Paquette to come forward.
All right.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Councillor Middleton Hope, for your query. Yes, the commission did very carefully consider that. We reviewed it a number of times and had some very robust conversation about that. And we also spoke with City Legal as we were working through this. And because it is not required by the legislation, we decided that we would not be including that.
Okay. You haven't convinced me on this one either. The third one is Section 46 is the salaries of the Chief of Police. And there's a component in there that says non-association personnel. What does non-association personnel actually refer to? The commission, in my view, should be responsible for the salaries of the chief of police and any other employee that they have a contract with, which may or may not include the deputy chief, but does not include other senior officers or the association or civilian members.
Yes, and let's see if I can get 1 out of 3.
Okay.
So the striking of this provision is really because this provision obligated city council to essentially ratify the recommendations for the salaries, which is not what the Police Act requires, and
Correct.
it's really not the practice. The commission comes with the total budget, council approves the budget, and then it's up to the commission. The commission under the Police Act has the responsibility to then to allocate that budget. So it really is a commission obligation to deal with the salaries, not something that has to come back and get council's ratification.
I'm just thinking in terms of the wording, that's all. So I would be inclined to remove all non-association personnel because I don't know who that refers to.
Ms. Paquette, do you have an answer to that, or what or Ms. Thompson?
Well, and so non-association personnel would be non-union members, because there are
Which union?
there are civilian staff members.
So is it civilian staff to which we're referring here?
There's also the Senior Officers Association, there's the Police Association, there are a number of both QP Local 70 and 71.
Please come forward, Ms. Paquette. Thank you.
So that might help.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Noella Piquette.
Nice to meet you in
Chair.
person.
Nice to meet you too. I really hate the Miss Piquette. It's doctor or chair. That's okay. I didn't like it even when I was not a doctorate. So the wording of this is to remove all of 46. So I'm not really sure why we're picking it apart.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said to begin with.
Saying is 46 is redlined, it's being removed from,
The entirety.
Okay.
Yeah, because we are responsible solely for the chief of police in the hiring, and this is also consistent across Alberta with all of the commissions.
Right, and therefore the salary.
Correct.
However, there are police services across the province, police commissions across the province that are also responsible for the deputy chief's salaries. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
So are we responsible for the deputy chief's salary?
Not in our bylaws, we are not.
Okay.
Only the chief.
Okay, so that'll be between the chief and the deputy.
Correct.
Okay, and so the non-association personnel, that language there has been removed.
Correct.
Good, okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Did you want me to speak to the number in the commission?
the up to 9?
Yeah.
Or 9 or 15 or?
Yeah,
Sure.
so the number has actually not changed, although the wording may lead one down that particular path. We have been 9 for a while. I do recall
Yep.
when we asked for additional ones, when we knew that we were going to have some appointees from the government. That didn't go forward. So it has remained 9, but now it also incorporates 2 people who are promoted from the government. And should the government promote more, there is no word that they will. We've asked quite often. I also sit on the Alberta Association of Police Governance,
Yep.
and we are constantly asking. There's no push right now, so we will be staying at 9. If they appoint someone else, that means that we will remove an existing one at the end of the term, and someone else will come in, but we would always have the cap at 9.
So is there a concern in terms of the balance between the number of appointments from the province and the number of potential appointments from the city? Is that the impetus behind
Yeah, I was
this?
going to say, at the beginning, when they were appointed, and there was very little information coming forward as to what this would mean and whether these individuals would be responding back with information to the government, there's a lot of nervousness, and so we were concerned about having 2, but that certainly has not been the case, and so I would say that all of the concerns have been allayed. It's no concern.
Okay, then while you're here, what about Section 30? The renewal.
Oh, yeah, we have talked about that a great deal, as Commissioner Schmidt-Rempel has pointed out. Certainly, when we offer an extension to the contract, we would be doing this collaboratively so that the City Council could also give us feedback, but ultimately, it's our decision.
Yep.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Thank you for answering those questions.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I would stay here, Dr. Paquette, in case there
Thank you.
are other questions.
Sorry?
Why don't you just have a seat if you wouldn't mind? Just, there might be other questions instead of you having to walk back and
Sure.
forth. I know.
No, you get the hot.
Why do you think I sent you an email letting you know about the meeting? All right. The only other questions are right now from you, Councillor Middleton Hopes, if you'd like to proceed.
Just one in regards to, it was an issue, I think it's been satisfactorily dealt with, but I just want to confirm that it has in regards to the payment of the GOA appointments by the city. That has been approved?
That is later on our agenda.
Okay, fair
So
enough.
we have, yeah.
That's one of the breaks then. All
That is
right.
something that has one of the closed possible meetings in it, so.
Okay.
It's at a different time.
Thank you.
So I do want to look at 39.1, as this is just a minor thing. We like to keep changing the names of our standing policy committees. So you have Community Safety Standing Policy Committee, that should be Safety and Social Standing Policy Committee. So just something to catch if this moves forward, to make sure that is actually changed before it would go to council. And following up on some of the questions from Councillor Middleton Hope, within the Police Act, having up to 9, and the up to 9 is important, right? It's not saying 9. Does that essentially give as much power and authority to the commission and to council as possible within the boundary of the Police Act to make decisions? You know, if we want to do 7 or 9, it would be a decision made by the commission and council. So basically, it gives us the flexibility to do our job, but within the legislation from the province. And I know you also talked about this with the renewal. So you mentioned how it would be done collaboratively. There would be updates to council. You're not going to be doing this in the dark and keeping council in the dark going, we've given a $500,000, raise.
As much as it would give the council joy to have things sprung upon them, no. We also like to be fairly regular with information and get the feel of what's going on. Yeah.
And any changes to wages, et cetera, must be done within the overall budget given to you by council and must be done with labor laws and everything else. You have all of those regulations in place, all those policies in place.
Yes, Adam and I are bobbing heads right now, yes.
Okay, so we have to remember that this is the bylaw, but there are other documents that back it up and other things there that support all of this. Okay, thank you very much. I don't know if there's any, I don't think there are any other questions, so we will now move to debate at this part. Thank you both very much. And if you want to stick around, the honorarium part later on the agenda is also, of course, about Police Commission. All right, I have a motion from Councillor Schmidt-Rempel. Oh, just a moment, I have
Oh,
one.
I'm in for debate.
In for debate, Councillor Carlson, perfect.
Yes, thank
Mr.
you.
Westerson is making an amendment, so we may get a slightly different version here. You're just making the amendment I requested? Perfect. I know, we like to just change committee names every so often to see if anybody's paying attention in the documents. It's, we should just call them all like Bob and Fred and Joe, so they, Thank you, Mr. Westerson. So, the new motion, be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee recommend that Council provide first reading to Bylaw 6476, amendment to Bylaw 5969, Lethbridge Police Commission Bylaw at the July 15th, 2025 Council meeting with the following amendment. At Section 39.1, striking the reference to the Community Safety Standing Policy Committee and replacing it with the Safety and Social Standing Policy Committee. Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
Right, well, while we're waiting for the amended motion to come up, starting in January 2023, the Lethbridge Police Commission requested that this be sent on for amending and for review. So on March 2023, the Government Standing Policy Committee referred to administration the request to amend the Lethbridge Police Commission bylaw. So the Police Commission in 2023, we went through it, we made changes, and I believe those changes were considered while you were on the commission as well, Councillor Crowson. After those round of changes were made, we sent that to legal. We received some recommendations from legal. The commission went through it again. We made more changes. We sent it back to legal. They made some recommendations about what we could and could not do. We aligned aligned this all with the Provincial Police Act. We reviewed it again. We went through the recommendations, made sure that we were in alignment with everything, made sure that legal approved everything. We went over it again, and now here we are, and I would ask for my colleagues' support.
Okay. And Councillor Carlson, you said you were in for debate?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to say that on this, as Councillor Schmidt-Rempel just said, it's been a long process. I do have some reservations in the fact that Mr. Faust said that this is sort of making sure that we live in the reality of the way used to operating in, but I will support this bylaw amendment coming forward. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Middleton Hope?
I'm just wondering if Councillor Carlson cut in and out, because I didn't get what the heck he was saying.
did, but the gist of it is he doesn't want to live in reality.
Oh, I see, he wants to live in fantasy land. Okay,
But other than that, he supports this bylaw.
good. No, I appreciate the hard work that the commission has gone through with legal services to come up with a far more robust bylaw. It was long overdue, and in the result, I appreciate the comments from the chair of the Police Commission and Mr. Faust, and I'm prepared to support the amended version. Thank you.
Okay. With all the debate in, back to you, Councillor.
Nothing further to add, so I will just call for the vote.
Question's been called. All in favor? And that is unanimous, so that goes forward to council as recommended. We move now to 6.2, CC11, Technology for Council Members Policy. This is Ms. Madden. You get the fun of trying to wrangle all of us into technology. And you've given us some options. You just want to talk about in broad the 3 options that you put forward, just so that we have a reminder of what you sort of suggested as possibilities.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Madam Chair. The 3 options that are proposed for council members is option 1 is a standard technology package, and this is pretty much to assign you some, to standardize all the equipment that you receive, including laptops, keyboards, the whole package. Option number 2 is an allowance package, where you receive an allowance for every piece of equipment that you utilize to conduct council business, and yet again includes either a laptop, a desktop, your keyboards, your supplies, your phone, so you will receive an allowance for that. And then option number 3 is almost like a one of those packages where you pick what it fits your needs. And then, yes, you have the option to select if you want to have an allowance or you would like to receive a standard piece of equipment. So we are here to get your direction and questions on which of these packages better fits this group, and or if we should make changes and adapt to council needs. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for giving us some time to look over this the last couple of months. I'm going to, at this point, see if there's any members of the public who are really worried about what council gets for technology, because this is, members of the public's opportunity to speak on the issue. I kind of assume nobody would have that, but I do know this is something that members of council will have concerns about. I see now that Councillor Parker and Mayor Higgin have both joined us online as well. Councillor Carlson, though, you have your hand up. If you would like to go ahead, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for our staff to bring this forward. First, I think option 3 makes the most sense for me. But my question is, I have 2 quick questions. 1, effective date. Will this be effective for the incoming council? It's kind of, we always seem to amend these policies late in our term, and certain members of council may have been operating under old policies, and I don't want to throw something new at them. So effective date, would this come into effect for the incoming council?
Thank you. Yes, with incoming council, I guess the life cycle of technology, if accepted, is for the full council term.
I guess my question, I guess I'll reverse it. Is this effective for current council, or will this only impact incoming council?
Mr. Matthews, I think, has the answer to that question.
Thank you, Councillor Carlson, for asking that question. I think it really comes for council to make the decision of where they want this to come into play for the timing of it. Our intention here is to bring the 3 different packages. It would be effective for the next council because obviously it's the equipment, but some of the pieces in here would also, if you did it sooner than that, it would affect the outgoing council as well too. So, and not saying that there isn't any sort of perceiving on that, but the reality is that I think the bigger thing on that is that I think council they could direct us, or governance could direct us on how they want to implement it as the effective date. I think the biggest thing for administration is we would like to have it for the next council so we understand what packages we're getting in there for.
Excellent, thank you. And I do, off the top of my head, first blush, I think if I was running for council and getting elected, I'd probably want option 3. It gives a bit of flexibility. But my second question was around, this is just technology. Do we have any ancillary policies or anything around non-technological equipment? I'm thinking some of us prefer a standing desk, some of us prefer different type of chair or items like that. Where would that fall? Is that in a different policy? Because I see this that you can have 2 monitors. I have never used even a monitor in my time on council. I just use my laptop. Could a member of council then redirect that money to say, I don't need any monitors, but I do really prefer a standing desk? Or how is that accomplished?
So thank you, Councillor Carlson. So I'm just going to give a bit of there isn't a policy today that actually provides that in for council members. I think the standing piece is that, the offices that get signed upstairs has always been that component, although work is a little bit different in modern days than it is in, when the building was originally designed. I think that once again comes to members of council, if they want to include broaden the scope of this policy beyond technology to be council resources or equipment, whatever, maybe I'm not coming up with the right terminology on that there. And then, of course, if council would be wanting, providing any direction to us on what would be the dollar upset limits or the type of equipment and so forth, that would be involved in that.
Okay. Up till now, how have we accomplished this? Is it just if Jeff comes to you? I remember our previous city manager, Mr. Sherwin, I asked for a standing desk, and he just said, feel free to stand. And so how do we accomplish this currently?
Thank you, Councillor Carlson, again. And without saying what Mr. Sherwin would say, regardless to that, no, I think currently right now, I'm not aware that we have a mechanism for that. I mean, obviously the mayor and council office has a budget. So I would think that if a member of council needed a certain piece of equipment, and it could very well be from accessibility point of view and so forth, as we're talking about here for future council members, I think at that point in time, we would look at that budget, that operating budget, and try to accommodate within that.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, Councillor Middleton Hope.
Just briefly, thank you for the work that's been done on this. I see that there's what appears to, first of all, option 3 is options. They're all options that are provided to us. We don't have to take the stuff that we're offered. We can pick and choose what we want, which I like. There appears to be 2 new additions, which is the internet compensation and the apps up to $100 a year. Is that correct? Those are both new? We don't have those now?
Thanks for the question, Councillor Middleton Hope. I believe for the internet, and I read on this package, it was addressed somehow. So I'm going to leave that aside, maybe for our Chief Financial Officer.
Yeah.
For the apps, yes, that was an addition. And I believe last meeting during April, we were asked also, one of the questions was about apps. So we included this in the options just to cover your questions presented as an option. Yet again, it's up to you to include this under the options or not.
Okay. Mr. Matthews?
Yes, thank you, Councilor Milton Hope. So in regards to the internet component here, and I was trying to go through it, it might even be in the report, but we did take a look at that. It is actually, it was originally at one point in time where internet service provider costs were reimbursable. And if now it's actually within the benefit package that goes in this. So part of the dollar value that comes up with the compensation includes that component, if I remember right. My team is in the background.
Can you provide me with a line item?
I will take a look. Yeah, exactly. I'll take a look and find that information to
Sure.
subsequently pass to members of council in regards to the policy I'm referring to.
Okay. Okay, great. And as far as the cell phone usage is concerned, I take it that's covered for city business if we are traveling?
Thanks for the question. Yes, indeed, it's part of the options and the services that we provide.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Schmidt-Rempel? Oh, Mr. Matthews, you have the answer?
I do, and my apologies there. It was right in front of my eyes, and I just didn't read it fast enough. So inside the document there, it is under Council Policy CC10, City Council Remuneration and Benefits. The policy clarifies that the remuneration provided to council members is intended to cover a wide range of work-related expenses, including home internet services.
Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Ms. Madden, for bringing this forward, the options. A couple questions, just in regards to some discrepancies in the costing. Option 2, the initial cost, councillor purchases their own hardware using an allowance of $1,300. But in option 3, the choice is city-issued Windows laptop and or iPad. So we have the option of getting both, which means that there's a $1,000 difference in that. So why would those two, why would the councillor purchasing their own hardware using an allowance not be $2,300 as opposed to the and or iPad option being the $2,300?
Thanks for the question, Councillor Schmidt-Rempel. And you are right. On option number 2, we only give you the allowance to purchase one piece of equipment. And it is, we follow the direction of council. If you would like to add also the addition of the iPad for the allowance package, we can do that.
I just think that the costing should be the same between the two packages. And then when I go down a little bit and we're looking at council chooses accessories using the allowance, and there's only an $85 allowance in our own choice, but in the council pick city provides, it's $210 because there's webcams and headsets and everything added onto there. So I think it makes more sense to make at least those two costings equivalent and make sure that we're doing that across the board, making sure that we're allowing the same costings for that.
Thanks for the suggestion, and if council desires to do that, we can also add that to option number 2.
Yeah,
Okay.
if we suggest you go away with option 3, then you don't have to worry about doing anything to option 2.
No, but it's just making sure the two are equivalent if we're looking at that. The other question I have is that if council decides to do its own purchasing, can we do that through city purchasing to recognize the savings that the city gets in bulk purchasing?
That's a really good question. I will have to get back to you on that.
Because that's just saving money if we're picking our own equipment. Yeah, if it's the case, but no. But
look
if
like
we
you're
are,
eager to
do we
answer
get
the
to have
question.
that? Do we get to have
The
that?
head
have
of
the answer?
purchasing is sitting right here, so I'm
Yeah.
looking.
If you have the answer, please come forward. You can always tell when somebody's very eager to answer one of our questions.
Thank you.
Just make sure you introduce yourself again.
Yes, Tyler Kaiser, Supply Chain Manager. So it's possible that we could make the acquisition. There wouldn't generally be a significant net benefit. In fact, it might actually be more costly when you factor in the administration time to actually make that acquisition, just given the fact that we're not able to really leverage much through that actual acquisition process.
Okay,
So
but if there is the opportunity, would we be advised, like if you were doing a bulk purchase at the time that new council was coming on and you knew that new council maybe wanted something in the package that you were ordering, could new members of council take advantage of that?
Yeah, we definitely could take a look at something like that if that were the case. I think we would have to probably try and still standardize what types of equipment people would be using, but we could certainly package it together if there's a general agreement.
Okay, yep. And then I guess when I look at the hardware life cycle, why would we replace all of council's equipment if some members of council are re-elected? Why would we not just carry their equipment over to save money, particularly if their equipment is still good, it's still functioning well, it's still up to date? Why replace that equipment and not recognize the cost savings in just carrying that over?
Thanks for the question. We follow an evergreen program. So, and that means that we replace equipment before it breaks. And the livelihood of a
Choose then to hold on to that allotment but not use it right away. They could choose to purchase out their equipment at the end of the term and then just carry on using that equipment through into the next term.
That is a really good question that I'm going to let our Chief Financial Officer answer.
I've had my iPad for 8 years, so yes.
Yeah, so I think in that regard, if the way I would look at it, although we haven't specifically addressed that in here, that question, Councillor Schmidt-Rempel, is that what we would likely do in that regard, we would only be reimbursing based on the purchase of what a council member did. So keeping in mind that yes, that council member could actually replace it next term, although if they didn't, the budget typically for that period of time would actually go back to the MRSR. They'd have a new allocation in the next term. They just wouldn't get twice in the next term from that point of view.
That makes sense. I'm just wondering if it starts fresh next term in September.
Yeah.
If people are reelected, they decide to hold on to their equipment and not use that allocation right away, then
It's
maybe
just the savings to the organization.
Yeah, and they could use that allocation if they need to or if they not sometime throughout their term.
That's right.
Okay.
Yep, it doesn't have to be right up front there in that regard. I think the risk that Ms. Madden is talking about there is that it's just from the point of view that as technology goes and all of a sudden it fails, it does take a bit more time for staff to actually rush to get something and so forth, and sometimes there's cost on it. That wouldn't be the count in option 2, but that'd be more like option 3 or option 1.
Okay, thank you. I'll step out for now.
Okay. Councillor Carlson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I didn't get any feedback from any of my colleagues. And one of the things I'm struggling with is I've been on council for far too long. When I joined council, I was just provided with the standard equipment. And it was a big learning curve for me because I grew up in the Macintosh world and all my business and personal life was Mac, and switched over to the city technologies that I had to learn. Did we get any feedback from any of our colleagues talking about the lack of choice or what they would want? Like I do like option 3, but I've relearned all my tools. I wouldn't be able to operate a Macintosh now if my life depended on it. But I see Mr. Mayor wants to weigh in, and I know he's a bit of a technological expert, so I'm hoping he can maybe weigh in on how other members of council would like to proceed.
I know we've had conversations around this, but Mayor Higgin, if you'd like to go forward, go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Crowson, and thank you, Councillor Carlson. Councillor Carlson, you haven't been on council too long. You're still giving the input needed, so I just wanted to make sure that I mentioned that. Thank you. No, I was just, when I was looking through the different options and I was conversing with another one of my colleagues about, I kind of like the option 2. And I guess it goes back to a question that I had when this was first brought forward, was that I think it's important that we provide, the city provides councillors with the technology that they need to get their work done. And to your point, Councillor Carlson, it's sometimes it's a learning curve for some that are in the ecosystem of Mac or that of Windows. I know I'm an MCSC guy, so I'm a Microsoft certified guy, but I've since changed to Mac just for the mere fact that we're given an iPhone and an iPad usually. Well, and a Mac computer is just seamless to work together with with the other two, and so it's something that I've really enjoyed. It's something I haven't used a Windows computer outside of my other work for quite some time, and I find it just easier for me to get my job done. When I look at option number 3 or some of the other options, I may not have that ability. So I guess my question would be, if I wanted to continue in that Mac world, if you will, am I going to do it illegally within the city? That would be option 2, I would imagine. And so that's something that I just was a question that I would have regarding how that would play out.
Yeah, that is.
And I know,
question.
Councillor Crowson, you're pretty similar to me, and I know as far as using Mac, you're quite you do use that as technology, and it just I just wanted to know, is option 2 the only option if we wanted to move forward with that particular ecosystem of Mac?
Well, yeah, which is why my city one is upstairs and I'm using my own one here. And that is the question. What I've heard from, I've talked to all my colleagues around this. Overall, from what people have said, majority opinion, and this is not going to be unanimous, is more towards option 3. But one of the sticking points is, do we have to have Windows for everybody? If somebody, option 3 works, but you are a diehard Mac user, can you have option 3 and a Mac? Is there wiggle room there? Because I think we could go option 3 quite easily if you just gave the Mac users a Mac.
So, thank you, Councillor Crowson and Mayor Higgin, in regards to that. Ultimately here, what we'll say on this is that under option 3, if council really desires to be either Windows or Mac, you could just ask us to build it that way. There is one thing I just have to note. I know Ms. Madden brought this up before. There is some extra costs in regard that we would want some training and so forth for our staff to be able to support members of council on Mac devices, and that's not the standard we use across the city. So we would do some of that component in here, and Ms. Madden can talk to that as well. But really, it comes down to, if that is the choice for members of council that they would like to do, it could be either Windows or Mac, just like it is or an iPad.
Yeah.
And that option. So I think that is something that I think really is around this table, that what tools work best for you, and I think that's what we've heard as we've talked about this last couple of times, and then what pieces. And the only reason I say it on the training side is that although some members may not need as much support, in the future there could be somebody that wants to get a Mac and so forth, and they do need quite a bit of support from us, and we would want to make sure we were able to support them or have a contract to support them or something in that line. I don't know if Ms. Madden wants to add anything else to that.
But just to also say, this is not a one and done today. If we move forward, what we're saying is, please go create a policy that we then get to review again in September. And so we're not, like, whatever we say today is not the thing we're ultimately stuck with. It is if we agree with what we get back in September. And so option 3 could be a modified option 3 with the Mac use tied in. But we also have to realize if we're going to do stuff like that, we lose the power of group purchases, because you're getting a couple of one-offs for council. So there's always a trade-off. So keep in mind that, like, this is a decision, but really the main decision comes in September. All right, Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
And I would ask that if people are moving more towards option 3, not everyone is going to need all the things that are under option 3. So you might not take advantage of those. So I would suggest that if there are members of council who, for instance, don't use 2 monitors, for that $500, that gets set aside for them in their own technology budget to be used somewhere else later on down the line. If they need something replaced, a keyboard replaced, or if they want to purchase a different piece of technology or something like that. The same with the city-issued phone or personal phone for $475. If they don't take a city-issued phone, that $475 should be set aside for them to be used later on. So there's a bit of flexibility to purchase your own equipment as well.
So to that, Councillor
hybrid, 2
Schmidt-Rempel,
and
I
3.
think that is, so that is almost like an option 4, which we could do on it, which is basically taking that amount and up to a certain amount. Here's the particulars that council sees as the norm, that it builds to that dollar value. But if members of council want to use that for a combination of different pieces of technology, that we can support. I think there's a little bit of pieces. We'll work on that a little bit, but we could say, do a hybrid of option 3 that we come back with the policy.
Yeah, and I'm looking more at a hybrid of option 2 and 3.
Okay.
Blending those so that there's some purchase on your own, some purchase together.
We've moved ahead. Nobody likes option 1.
Well, and I think, yeah, true. And I think the hardest part for this for ourselves, and when the team was talking about this and working on it, was that there's a combination of different options you could come with. Really, it comes down to around this table, what does council need to do their work? And I think that's what members of governance said last time. Yeah. And we will try to listen today and come back with a draft policy, and we may not get it 100% right in the next draft, but then we'll correct it. You'll have that ability to make that tweak in September.
Yeah, knowing that we would like it in place. I think because we won't see the policy till September, there's no way it's going to be for this council. It really is for the next council.
Yeah, and I think as our primary goal is to have that policy for next council so we can get the ordering and so forth. I know Ms. Madden and her team is trying to get that in place so that when they arrive, depending on which option was chosen, we would be able to do that. Obviously, if it's option 2, there's a very limited amount from that point of view, but there is things that we might structurally have to put in place.
And knowing we could put hours into this, come up with the perfect thing, there can be new 9 people completely in October who make completely different decisions. All we're doing is best possible at this point.
Yep.
Mayor Higgin, you're next in queue. Sorry, go ahead.
I'll jump out and come back in.
Sorry, thank you. Go ahead, Mayor Higgin.
Oh, thank you. And first I want to thank administration. I can only imagine the difficult task of herding us cats, to put it bluntly, around technology. And it's changed so much over time, everything from virtual meetings as some of us are attending here now to many other things. But I wanted to touch base on one thing that I understand with option 3 or option 2 and option 3, the difference of sometimes the administrative work or the IT work that is going to be needed for option 3 over option 2. One of the main reasons I've actually switched from a Windows-based to Mac-based is with the purchase of a Mac. It's the IT work is done online and done via phone with specialists in the Mac world, as long as you purchase that when you purchase your device. And I don't think I've had anyone actually look at anything for me, but I may be a different species, to be quite honest, as I don't call IT that often for concerns or at all for that matter. But I want to make sure that I don't want to put with an option 3 or a hybrid, put our admin staff into, or IT staff into having to be retrained up on this, because majority of the software that we're using now is cloud-based, that is used generally through a browser or something that I just do not see in the years that I've used a Mac prior, councillor to mayor, have not seen what the work of IT would need. It's work that could be done via pick up the phone and someone logs into your machine, Macintosh person, with the exception, of course, it being confidential items, but majority of that is not the case. There's not programs that are really installed on that device. And so I just want to be hesitant as far as is an option of sending out IT and spending the dollars to get that training, as I don't know if it would be needed, but that's something in probably option 69, Mr. Matthews, I'm sure you're thinking as that comes, or 72 or whatever that option hybrid comes back. But again, going back to the beginning, thank you for the work in this. It's a challenge at the best. And so I wanted to make sure I was part of this conversation to hear from my colleagues exactly what they need in order to get their job done in the community. So thank you for that. And I guess that's more of a debate than a question. Wouldn't you agree? Thank you.
We are good at the question debates. Okay, Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the mayor's point, if we're going to draft an option 3B or something, or a hybrid, perhaps a statement that, to conserve costs or whatever it would be, but a statement around that if councillors choose equipment that is not city supported, that they are responsible for their own IT. If that can be accomplished, that may sort of help that, rather than having to train our staff on something that they may use once every 4 years would be kind of a waste. I do have a question, probably through you, Madam Chair, to probably Mr. Matthews or anyone. If we don't approve anything till September and we finally come up with the greatest model, does that leave enough time for purchasing to get equipment in place? Because the new council will be arriving October 21st to start work. So I guess I'm just wondering on the timeline of, if we dither too much, can we still have all this in place? And I guess it's dependent on what we ask for.
Yeah, presently the timeline is coming from admin, so it really does depend on the changes we make in September. So it's best if we have the discussion now of what we want to see in the policy, so that they go away and the policy comes back. So the worst thing would be for us to say, go and do this policy now, and then completely change our mind when they bring the policy back.
Gotcha.
Right? That's where the delay would be. Otherwise, I can't imagine that you can't get technology between middle of September and middle of October.
Yeah.
No.
So
Yeah.
So we need to be, oh, sorry, go ahead, Mr.
No,
Matthews.
I was just gonna agree there. I know that Ms. Madden and myself had talked about that. As long as we get to there, that would be, depending on the option. If it was option 1, it might get tighter. If it's option 2 where you're getting your own, well, that would be a lot less work on the regards to our side of the world. But I think, I'm just going to look at Ms. Madden just to confirm, and I know our procurement person's in the room too, but just to nod that, I think we would be okay in September. The big thing is we've got to really hit the nail on the head, hopefully with the policy, so that we don't go past there. And so it might be really good to give us in the resolution some of the specific criteria, so we're hopefully hitting that mark more clearly in September.
So what I'm hearing is overarching policy is, it's to give council what they need to do their job. We want the option of having a Mac or a window. We want the option to pull things from 2 as needed, so like pull some of the things there, because it has to recognize that everybody's going to do it slightly differently. I think those are the main options I'm hearing, and that if somebody does not spend their money initially, that money kind of stays in an account throughout that term of council, so that, especially if you're brand new and 6 months in, you're like, oh, I thought I was going to do the job this way, or a year in, you can say all of a sudden, I really need this, and that money hasn't disappeared from council's budget. That is what I'm hearing are some of the overarching concerns to build into the policy. But there may be some I've missed.
Madam Chair, I think you've encapsulated what I've heard as well. The only other one is what I think the mayor and I talked about, is that if your equipment is outside of city standard, you are responsible for your own IT.
Yes.
That would help with the staff costs.
And the other thing is, whatever we are using cannot in any way affect the security of the city. Like, you can't bring in something that has no firewalls or anything else. And
I don't know. Mark Campbell still uses his BlackBerry, I think.
All right. Notwithstanding that, back to Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
And just for my own clarification and confirming, on both option 2 and 3, we are allowing buyout at the end of term for members of council. Everything just needs to be wiped by IT before transfer, but that is permitted under both 2 and 3. we're maintaining that for both of those? Yeah?
Yes, council may choose to purchase the equipment.
Okay.
It is up to you to
Yeah.
choose if you would like to do that. Yes.
Okay, perfect. That's the last I had. Thank you.
Sorry, I said something brilliant and neither Mr. Westerson and I can remember it. So we said that we want options for Mac or Windows. We want the option to have the money keep in the budget in case somebody changes their mind on something. What was the second thing that we said had to go into the policy?
Madam Chair, the technical support.
Oh, yes. Yes, if you buy something on your own, you do not have technical support with it necessarily. All right. Mr. Westerson's trying to capture everything as he's trying to revise the motion, so we were trying to make sure what we were getting it down. All right, Councillor Middleton Hope.
There we go. Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like clarification from legal counsel on the following. The ownership and proprietary nature of documents, phone messages, emails, texts, notebooks, whether they are the property of the City of Lethbridge, and if we use our own personal equipment, whether it's laptops either to purchase or we use our own phones, whether they are disclosable under the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act.
Or whatever the new act is today. So you're wondering if the city owns the work we do on the equipment?
My position is they do. So
Okay.
that, I want clarification. And so I think what's important is that any new council in the selection of equipment, whether it's I'm going to use my own cell phone and I'll get paid for that, they must clearly understand that the contents of the phone are disclosable, if that is the case. And if it is, then I think council members coming in need to know that.
Okay, so this may not necessarily fit into the technology budget, but is a wider concern.
It is.
Ms. Shigehiro, do you have a comment today? What is the intellectual property, for one thing? And I would assume even if you're using, anybody can ask for anything under the Act. Whether or not we disclose it is another matter based on the Act. Would that not be accurate?
Intellectual property and previously FOIA, but now the Access to Information Act are two separate things. So I believe Mr. Lowen spoke about this at the last meeting. Councillor Crowson, if you have your personal phone, it's for your personal use, but also for business use. You would have to hand your phone over to the city if there was a FOIP request and you had records on your phone. So I believe Mr. Lowen referred to pictures of cats and children and things. So those would all potentially be scrutinized by the city, by city staff in determining what to disclose. Intellectual property is an entirely different thing. So I think what the question is more along the lines of the Access to Information and Protection of Privacy Act.
The question was brought up notebooks. I have this. I do everything, like I still write notes. Who owns this, me or you?
You do.
You own the book, but the notes that you make in it
be
may
FOIP.
be records and could be disclosable.
Yeah, we
And
are
so-
public servants. Everything we do could become public documents.
Right.
If it's in the context of your job, yes.
Yeah.
Right. Therefore, should be retained by the city upon our departure.
It depends. Some things are transitory records, some things are records, so it would depend what's in there, but it depends what's in there, so.
But let's
Well,
also
there's
ask this,
certainly
is this
non-disclosure
relevant to the conversation we're having today about what technology to buy?
But what is important about it is that we make sure that that discussion is had as we're acquiring it.
Then I suggest you look to Ms. Hilford and say we'll talk about that when we do the 90-day orientation later on, if that is something you think important for the next council to know, and that we refer that to that agenda item.
I didn't want to burden her.
So I
Yes.
don't think, I'm just going to make the suggestion that may not be relevant to what technology, because it's about how the technology is used. So can we have that conversation at that point, if that is relevant?
Yep, just want legal counsel to be aware of it and on top of it.
Okay, perfect. Any other questions on this? Oh, go ahead.
Just for clarification, does council or does SPC wish to have a legal opinion prepared, like a formal, fulsome legal opinion, or just for those questions to be able to be answered at a later meeting?
I would think it's just to have the answer if it needs to come up, because it may already be part of the orientation, we may not be aware of it, so I just think be prepared in case it comes up. All right. Councillor Schmidt-Rempel, you're back on the queue.
Yeah, actually, you did raise a question for me. With regards to the policy, it does state that devices are coordinated through the clerk's office. And understanding that the clerk runs our orientation and everything like that, I'm wondering if it's coordinated by the clerk's office, or if this wouldn't be more fitting under Mr. Gautier's purview, because that's where council's executive assistant operates under. So I'm just wondering, so as to lighten the burden on the clerk's office, if we wouldn't be looking at moving our IT needs to under Mr. Gautier's purview, because that's where our staff are. It's just a process question.
So that can be brought up as something for conversation as they're developing the policy,
Yeah.
I would recommend. I don't know if staff is very concerned about where it is, as long as somebody buys us the stuff.
Yep.
So, all right. I am seeing nobody else in the queue. Yeah, City Clerk's Department has worked on redeveloping the motion a couple of times. Councillor Carlson, this is your motion. So it was getting emailed to you. Have a quick review. We'll also be putting it up here. But we tried to, that's why I was trying to get everybody to reiterate their concerns. Basically, we will be asking administration to come back at the September governance with a draft of a policy that is mostly 3, has some elements of 2, and has those concerns in there about the Windows and Mac, about making sure, of course, that nothing that is done that is going to affect cybersecurity, about making sure that if you do something that is basically off menu, you're responsible for those things yourself, and that if you choose not to pick something in the menu, that money is kept in case you decide you need a different technology as the term progresses. This is put much better together by Mr. Westerson. Be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee refer this item to administration to prepare amendments to policy CC11, technology for council members, that consider a hybrid approach to options 2 and 3 and include the following: options for councillors to choose between either Windows or Mac operating systems, option of saving budgeted funds for later expenditure should they not be utilized immediately. Any purchases made by an individual councillor will require that councillor to obtain their own technical support, and return to the September 10th, 2025 Governance Standing Policy Committee for consideration with the policy. Does that capture all the concerns, questions, and issues that people have brought forward?
Madam Chair, I think it does. I wish I would have recorded what you said about 8 minutes ago, because it seemed to capture it perfectly. And I just don't want to think we're missing anything in setting administration away, but it seems to capture it for me. The one question I would have, it says any purchases made by an individual councillor will require their own IT. Any purchases made by an individual outside of city like if I buy
Outside the menu items.
exactly, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, we can make that sort of amendment. Basically, though, I mean, the whole idea of those 3 is simply to give guidance as the policy is being redrafted. So
Agreed.
these are not necessarily the policy, they're just the guidelines to create the policy.
My question would,
Mr. Matthews, you have something you wish to add to that?
Thank you, Councillor Crowson. I'm just wondering if one extra piece in here, and just from listening to the conversation, it could also be that we come back with an up to amount of an allowance for a certain smorgasbord of things that would be eligible for that allowance. because I think that's what I've heard around the table, is that whether we buy it or whether you buy it, it's basically an allowance amount up to a certain dollar value limit might be the way to go. And then we can figure out whether we procure it for the individual or whether the individual procures it for themselves.
Yeah, I thought that's where we said blending options 2 and 3, right? Options
Yeah.
2 is that's what people want, is that ability to go, all right, I want to make all the decisions, where option 3 are for those counselors that said, I have no idea, you make the decisions.
Yep, so if that's understanding, if we put that in there or a little bit in here on that, we will come back with that, and I think we'll be pretty well suited to get you a policy that I think will satisfy members of council.
Okay. Am I seeing consensus? Councillor Middleton Hope?
One final question arising from the new amended policy is in regards to security. Do you have any concerns in regards to this motion affecting security applications? So if, for example, if somebody decides to buy their own computer, ABC computer or whatever, are there any concerns that the city might have in regards to accessing our databases and or interfacing with it? Does that create any security issues?
Thanks for the question. Our security manager was here back in the April meeting, and he had also reviewed the options, and there were not security concerns about the provided options for council, including this new blended option 2 and 3.
Good, thank you.
Okay, back to the motion as amended a few times. Councillor Carlson, it is your motion. Have we captured all the stuff that we wish to send to admin to go do some policy writing over a long, hot summer?
Excellent. I think it makes sense to me. I hope it satisfies other members of council. I'm glad the mayor was here to chime in, because I was going to just go for option 3. But I do understand that we all have different styles, we all have different needs, and we all have different expertises. So I think this would give the widest abilities to council, especially for folks like our chair and mayor, who likes to use Macs. And I don't remember how. You could reteach me in 3 months. Anyways, unless there's anything further, I appreciate the work, I appreciate the input, and I'd call for the vote.
All right. Thank you again to admin for all the work on this and for helping us through this. Question has been called. All in favor? And that goes forward unanimously. Well, actually goes backwards unanimously, does not go forward to council. Moving now to the next item, CC19, distribution of promotional items policy. Mr. Gauthier, why do you not like pins? Oh, sorry, if you want to give an overview of what we are looking for in this submission, and then we will get into it.
I'm prepared to address any questions that the committee may have.
Okay, so first, because it is SPC, any members of the community want to speak on the promotional items policy? I don't see anybody in there. So we will move to questions from committee, starting with Councillor John Middleton Hope, please.
So, Mr. Gauthier, this would make you the swag man? It's rhetorical. It's taken us about 4 or 5 years to get here. Was it just simply because it was a robust policy before, or we had a whole lot more on our plates? Is there any reason why it's taken this length of time?
Councillor, through the chair, honestly, our group only took over this work fairly recently, earlier this year. I can't provide any commentary on as to what happened, the lag time.
All right, so you can't answer the question.
I cannot answer the question.
Fantastic, thank you.
Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Gauthier, for bringing this forward. If I can, Madam Chair, to Mr. Gauthier, there's a gap in process. Am I, or did I misread that? It says process and it's blank. And I read this last night, so
What page are
I'm
you
not
on
sure.
there?
I don't know. I read it last night, Belinda. Let me find it.
We will look
And
for a
the only-
blank process.
Yes, maybe I misread it. And I was only interested in it because it says that councilors, all members of council can utilize our gifting, our souvenirs, memorabilia, whatever it may be. But I've never been aware that there is any.
Yes, you're right. There is no process. This is just,
No.
this stuff exists, but how do
Yeah.
we use it? When do we use it? Why do we use it? And why does every other community have better swag than us?
And well, we may have great swag. That was my problem, is I never knew. I occasionally got an Oki pin or a City of Lethbridge pin, but there's plenty of events that I go to that I'm gifted things by other communities. And if we do have them, I've never been oriented to what we can and cannot utilize it for. So that was my only question: should there be a process? Should there be an orientation piece on this? These are the types of things you can and cannot do. Like if we have a nice pen to give, if I'm visiting a mayor somewhere, or if those type of things. So that was my only question. And now I see Mr. Gauthier is trying to find the process paper.
Well, and yeah, no, I will, before you answer that, Mr. Gauthier, I am going to add on to that, because that is one of the things. I was really hoping when this was coming forward, we would link it much more with our advocacy plan and things like that. So when we are going places, do we have the swag for the gifts? Do we, can we have stuff here when we are at the parades and different things like that? Do we have the shirts and all those sorts of things? That is what I was hoping we would see more in this, not just promotional giveaway, but the stuff that prepares us to do the work. Is that a different policy? Is it missing from this policy? Because when we go to conferences and everybody else is in matching shirts, we're not. What are we missing out? What are we not doing? And so tying in with the process of how to give this stuff away, but what's the process of also making sure we have that stuff?
I think I would say, Madam Chair, that that opportunity exists, whether it's articulated in process, in the policy or not. In practice, if any member of council wants to access any of the swag items that, or to understand what they all are, just a matter of consulting with Ms. Matsala or Mr. Hancock in your support areas, and to find out what's available. An example would be when the school tours come through, there's a water bottle that's put up for, I think, as a prize for whoever answers the most questions correctly, from what typically Councillor Crowson orients them on during their tour.
There is an opportunity here that we have been underutilizing that. Potentially.
Possibly, yes.
Okay. All right, Councillor Carlson, did that answer your question? Because you're right, there is no process that is built into this policy.
It sort of does and sort of doesn't. I guess going forward, and maybe again, along with Councillor Middleton Hope's questions previously, we need to discuss this during orientation for new councillors, to say, these are the possibilities. Because yes, I think we all show up to conferences and events, and other communities are there with full regalia and with something to give to someone. And I'm left going with a hearty handshake. So I think maybe the orientation process needs to include this, so I'll leave my questions for then. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Schmidt-Rempel, go ahead.
Mr. Gauthier has a question.
If I may, I think that could certainly be part of our orientation with the new council, to introduce the members of council as to what is available and get any feedback as to what, if there's anything else that they would like to see as part of that selection of offerings.
That sounds awesome.
Just following up on that, can old council get an idea as to what the options are, seeing as we are moving
Sorry,
into...
point of order, past
Yeah,
council, not old council.
Seasoned council?
I would not be so bold as to refer to this council.
Could we get a list?
Absolutely. Yes, we can do that.
Just because we are moving into summer parade season and all of those activities, it would be nice to have just a list of what's available, what we can access, what limits are, that kind of thing. And then also, as part of this policy, I didn't see in there how the items are selected. So maybe including something on council will be surveyed once a year on items, anything like that, because I know Councillor Crowson and I saw some really cool stuff that Okotoks had, and we wondered, oh, maybe that's something we could get as well. And then the other thing, just tying back to something that Councillor Crowson said as well. Again, we're moving into summer parade season. We will be out representing. If we have not bought our own shirts that identify us as City of Lethbridge, we don't have anything that identifies us as City of Lethbridge. So could somebody reach out to council on how we can get some of the swag from the swag shop if we are purchasing those ourselves, which some of us have already done. But if members of council don't have those, something that we can have that identifies us as a group, and we have the golf shirts and everything like that, maybe just something standard.
The short answer would be yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
So now that we've told you we want a lot more stuff in the boxes of there, let's look at the policy itself. Is it as complete as we want? Is this something we are thinking to send forward, or are we asking it? Like I said, my concern is, I think we're missing an opportunity here to align this more with advocacy. How do we use these things? Is it for council, for all the departments? Do we have the appropriate stuff in there? Are we thinking it through when we get visitors in, so that you're not running around buying something for a visitor, but we always have an option? Or are we satisfied with what this is for what it is? Go ahead, Councillor Middleton Hope.
Thank you. I think it could probably use some more robust examination, but I'm wondering if it would be appropriate to simply move it forward and in the background provide administration with an opportunity to enhance the conditions contained within this proposed policy. So that's a question to administration.
Address that.
Yeah, so that at least we can move forward with the proposal as you've put forward to us, but recognizing that there may be some tweaking along the way.
So this is your motion, Councillor Middleton Hope. What I'm hearing is a couple of things. One, recommend that council approve it as is, but also recommend that, one, it be part of the orientation for the next council. Two, that a list of what is actually hiding somewhere be sent to this council, so that if we are getting ready for the summer season, the parades and stuff, we know what options we have moving ahead. And three, if there is a way to enhance our community advocacy using this policy, can we look at, because you already know you have to revise it in the next council term anyways, as per policy. So is there a way to better link this with advocacy, so it doesn't just become about the items, it becomes more about how the items are used to enhance the city of Lethbridge through our advocacy work?
Certainly. Yep.
So those three motions moving forward as part of this?
Yep.
Okay. And again,
Mr. Westerson is working feverishly.
I know. We give Mr. Westerson and the team at the city clerks a lot of work to do. Do you need much time for that, Mr. Westerson? I think I remember what I said this time, if that helps.
And that's it for my comments or questions. So
Okay.
we'll wait for the motion to come up.
So we'll just all sit here and stare at each other while Mr. Westerson types.
If we've got time to kill, I'd love to hear what Councillor Crowson and Schmidt-Rempel saw from Okotoks. The hot ticket item at FCM was socks.
Yeah. We want you to know we did not get the item. It was what they gave to the speaker, but it was a charger, a stand-up charger with Town of Okotoks on it, which was very nice, and a few other items along those lines. Very practical, but again, branded in a way that very obvious who you got it from, and yet very useful.
Yeah, my most coveted possession is my City of Edmonton socks and my City of Lethbridge socks that I was gifted 4 years ago.
Well, I think it's telling that when I do bring my tea down, it's in my Lethbridge County mug and not my City of Lethbridge mug. This one keeps the tea way warmer. So, though I did get a mug yesterday from Apega, so I'm hoping the engineers can do even better, that it'll stay Apega, the engineers, not the pagans. So I'm thinking the engineers hopefully gave me an even better mug that stays warmer even longer. All right, here is the revised motion. Be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee recommends that Council, 1, approve policy CC19 distribution orientation process. 3, provide members of council an overview of the current items available to them for promotional items. And 4, align promotional items in the future with council's advocacy efforts and priorities. Does that capture what we're all hoping to see captured?
I think it is. There's one piece there that I'd like us to be cognizant of, and of course, that's the cost of the items that we are going to provide. Certainly, there might want to be some guidelines in regards to when it would be appropriate to dispense some of this, rather than drunken sailors on leave, providing as much swag as possible to as many people as possible.
Well,
I'm not sure that's what we
And
intend.
as I understand it, most places that do this do it as cost neutral. So a department that says, I request that, has to pay for it out of their department budget for the cost of the product. So we're not making a profit, but we are not in any way losing money on this. This is what I have seen from other communities. Would that be accurate, and could be built into the policy if we want to see it that way? That we're not, you're right, spending recklessly, but with purpose for why we would be giving these things out. It's not a way of getting a lot of free things. That's why I want to tie it with advocacy. Has to be a purpose, has to be cost recovery.
Yep, we're good. I think Jeff's got a comment.
Councillor Carlson, do you have a comment, or you want to be a drunken sailor?
Drunken sailor. No, I agree with Councillor Middleton Hope, but I think you captured it, that if you tied it with advocacy, right, like if you're visiting a mayor, it's appropriate for this amount or this pen and this shirt. If you're visiting with a cabinet minister, it's probably not appropriate to give anything. I don't think they're allowed. But those type of things, I think, would make much more sense to say, yeah, if you're meeting a group of people at City Hall, you don't give every one of them a shirt and pen and socks. So I think, yeah, some guidelines would be appropriate.
Yeah, tie with protocol, tie with advocacy, tie with a purpose. And I think that was the other thing when I looked through this, is why? Why do we have a room full of promotional items? That's the process. Give some rules around this. We need to have it, but it has to be done with purpose in mind. So, all right, Councillor Middleton Hope, that is your motion.
Thank you, and if I can get rainbows and unicorns on my nameplate, that would be just great. That's all I really need.
Oh, you haven't even seen the option of Velcro ones. We'll talk about that later.
Okay, I think we've beat this to death. Let's move it forward. I'll call the question.
Question's been called. All in favor? Excellent. Item 6.4, which we now move on to, which is honorariums for boards, commissions, and committees. That we had, which is why there is a closed session portion, if we wish to move into close, was around the police commission honorarium and whether or not it was appropriate to pay the provincial members. We will ask for a legal opinion. The legal opinion is what is given in the closed. If anybody did not have a chance to read it and wishes to ask questions on the closed, I would suggest we move into closed at this point. If you have all the information you need and we do not require to go into closed, let's focus on the overall matter, which is the honorarium for boards, commissions, and committees policy, and then specifically police commission. And Councillor Carlson, it was your concern that led us to have the legal opinion given. I see your hand is up. If you would like to begin with your questions. Oh, just a second. Any members of the public who wish to speak on this, this is your opportunity if you are wondering about police commission and other board honorariums. Nobody has jumped forward. Councillor Carlson, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just appreciate the work that was done on this. I see no need, as long as my colleagues have also read the in-camera or closed session portion. I have one question, just for clarity. If this passes, it means that all members of the boards, committees, and commissions that we pay honorariums to are entitled to an honorarium, excepting if they're already receiving payment for that work by their own organization. Is that correct?
Which staff is speaking to this? Do we have an answer for Councillor Carlson? So We removed organizational members because that was the concern. But if you are paid to be there, we're not giving you an honorarium. Would that be correct, Ms. Hilford? Because I think you'd probably best able to answer that.
Thank you for the question. Yes, we removed organizational members because there was some confusion with that as well with regards to what Councillor Carlson was saying about this. Was there clarification on other members that you were thinking that specifically, Councillor Carlson?
No, I just wanted to ensure that it's fair and equal for all. If you are participating on one of our boards, committees, and commission, you are entitled to the same honorariums as everyone, unless you're being paid to be there by your organization, correct?
So council did approve in the policy that there would be no organizational reps, and it's only public members. So for public members, we would pay. We wouldn't look into the background or anything like that.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Excellent. Then it has my full support. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Middleton Hope, go right ahead, please.
And another question, I guess, directed to Ms. Hilford, while we've got her here, in regards to council members on committees.
Sorry, what's the question?
Council members on committees. So everyone else receives an honorarium, council members do not.
We don't pay them honorariums, but we cannot tell other organizations whether or not to pay councillors honorariums.
Right.
Right? We do not pay honorariums to council members that that are our boards, commissions, and committees.
Correct. So for internal boards, committees, commissions that council established, council is not paid.
Right.
Any external boards, committee, and commissions that aren't established by council, they may provide honorariums. We are not aware, and we
don't
would
control
get into that.
Okay, thank you.
So we do have to make some recommended changes to the policy around the police commission. All members of the police commission would be eligible for honorarium regardless of who appoints them. The other question that was raised by the police commission is if whether or not this is retroactive. I am going to suggest it's not, it's moving forward, but I don't know if that is the consensus of my colleagues, just to put that on the table for discussion. So there were two questions before us that the police commission wanted to know. One, if they're included. We're saying yes, they're included. Two, they want to know if it is retroactive. For just to start the discussion, I am going to say not retroactive, but that is just to start the conversation. Councillor Middleton Hope, you were first in the queue. Go right ahead, please.
I would say that it is retroactive to the point at which other members of those committees are paid an honorarium. So if it was January the 1st, 2025, as an example, then they should be paid retroactively for their time between January the 1st and June the 1st.
Okay, Councillor Carlson, go right ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was trying to not get us to go in camera, but I think this may be something because I'd like to hear the legal opinion on this that may be in the in-camera portion. But if it doesn't have to be, I'll ask the question. What's the legal opinion on making it retroactive or not? If we've paid certain members but not certain, and now we're moving forward.
Well, let's just confirm. When did we start paying honorariums?
Council made that decision, I believe, mid last year, and we did make it retroactive to January of 2024. However, I don't believe there was provincial members on the police commission that early. I cannot remember.
So they would have been, they came on the same year as it started.
January 1st.
And so 2025 would not get paid out till this end of this year. So we would be, if we do this, they would be included in this year's pay. And they were there for 2024. And I'm assuming under rules of justice, Ms. Shigehiro, you would say they probably should get the retroactive.
I'm going to ask Mr. Foss to come up and answer as he's been working on this.
Back pay.
So it's just the simplest. And so it would add a little more administrative work. You just have to double check last year if it's the same members. I'm assuming completely doable to do that administrative work for 1 year past. Okay, because we would have records of minutes, who was in attendance, who wasn't. Okay, So recommendation is include them in the honorarium and include back honorarium, so they would get the 2 years instead of 1. Okay, Councillor Carlson, go ahead.
Thank you. Is it in the budget?
Is it in the budget? I think it is going to be less than $500, so but Mr. Matthews, is it in the budget?
So, just gleaming through this piece here, I would say this, if, without going through and doing it, if it looks like the cost of this is around $500, it probably should be able to cover it within the existing funding that council set aside of, it's higher than that, as I look up from Mr. Wetterson. So we just have to take a look at this in regards to what the impact would be before I say that, because the current budget is annually $48,000 annually for this this amount. So we just want to make sure that depending on what the retroactive and what the other committees are projected to actually do, that we can accommodate it.
Now, to be clear, today we are looking at the policy. So the policy is to include members of administrative concerns that I can't see.
Just so, and for committee's awareness, at the maximum rate, if these were paid in coordination with the other payments for our BCC members, we'd be looking at approximately $1,600 per year for those 2 provincially
So
appointed.
800 each?
800
Because it's
each.
2 people, okay.
And we'd be paying that out in accordance with our process. I think we'd look at to pay 2024 retroactively with the 2025 payments that would be made at the end of 2025.
So knowing that, the budget would be $1,600 for 2024, $1,600 for 2025. With that information, Mr. Matthews, is it in the budget?
The harder part, excuse me, the harder part, Councillor Crowson, on that one is knowing where you may, we may have to look at T4As and so forth for honorarium pieces. So just something to be consideration for others too.
Yeah, well, and that is why we also have in the policy an opt-out for any members of boards, commissions, and committees who are worried about how that will affect them or who do not feel that as a volunteer they should get paid. We are trying to find that balance between, we want to give you a thank you gift and you may not want to accept the thank you gift. So that's why the swag has to be there. Yeah, tying back to the other one. All right, any other questions on this? Again, keeping in mind there are 2 things. Changes to the policy, that we will be changing the policy, amending the policy to include anyone on our BCCs regardless of who puts them there, and that will be going forward. And then the other sort of motion is to make it retroactive to the beginning of this, knowing, as Mr. Matthews said, that we may then want to add into that motion that if it goes over the budgeted amount, we pull from council contingencies to cover it. All right, is everyone clear as mud and happy as larks with all of that? All right. Go ahead, Councillor Carlson, because you look like you have a thought you want to share.
And I do appreciate Mr. Matthews saying that we could cover it from council contingencies within the resolution. I think that makes a lot of sense. We're making the change. Let's cover it from our contingencies because while we are focused on a couple of provincial appointees, this may also impact the budgets because of organizational reps no longer being singled out and also not being compensated. So there may be a larger budget implication, but I think it can be accomplished through council contingencies, at least until incoming council does their interim budget.
Okay, Mr. Westerson has run to the printer, so I assume we're going to get an updated version of that motion pretty quickly here. I will then read it, and I believe it is yours, Councillor Schmidt-Rempel. So as long as you are comfortable with what we are seeing. Oh, sorry. That's right. Be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee recommends that Council approve Policy CC 67, honorariums for boards, commissions, and committees, as provided in Attachment 1 with the following amendment. 1, inclusion of providing an honorarium to the 2 provincial members of the Lethbridge Police Commission and retroactively providing an honorarium to the 2 provincial members of the Lethbridge Police Commission to January 1st, 2024, and fund any overages for this inclusion and fund any overages for this inclusion from council contingencies. I think there's just a little, yeah. And further be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee direct that the closed meeting documents, discussions, and report with respect to legal opinion, Police Commission honorarium, remain confidential pursuant to Section 29 Advice from Officials and 32 Legal Privilege of the Access to Information Act. Councillor Schmidt-Rempel, it is your motion.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Ms. Shakiro and your team for the legal opinion that we received on this in the closed documents. I think we've discussed this robustly, and I would just ask for council's or the rest of the committee's support on this.
I think we were so robust, we deserve an honorarium. Oh, just kidding. I am joking, of course. All right. Councillor Middleton Hope.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In regards to language, provincial members, I would feel more comfortable with provincially appointed members.
Yes, they are members, just appointed by another group. With that amendment.
That would be a friendly amendment.
Okay. It is always fun drafting these on the fly, isn't it, Mr. Westerson? And that is the fun of SBCs. They are supposed to be conversation, discussion, and changes. All right. With that change, it is back to you. Oh, sorry, Councillor Carlson, I see you are wishing to speak on this as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just maybe a quick question. I appreciate Councillor Middleton Hope's adding the appointed, because yes, they are our members. Does this cover the organizational reps? It really seems specific.
Remember, organizational reps have been removed.
Agreed. So we're just amending it to add the commission members.
And I mean, I don't think they will say adding the commission members. It will be basically something in the policy about, it doesn't matter who appoints them. If they're on our BCC, we pay an honorarium. Excellent.
And I guess my question is, this does cover the organizational reps, so they will be paid their, I'm looking for fairness and equity. And so they will be paid their honorariums where appropriate.
I think what it is saying is that if you are a volunteer on a BCC, you get an honorarium, though you can choose to opt out. I think in general, that is what this policy is saying. Ms. Hilford, is that accurate?
Section 3 does say honorariums will not be provided to organizational representatives.
Yeah. So it is in there. If you're already getting paid, if you're getting covered by somebody else, it's already in the policy. We're not letting you double dip.
Correct. But if you are an appointed organizational rep who is not being paid, like, and this is where I just need to jump in, because I want to make sure it's there, because I'm all about fairness and equity.
Well, and I think where Councillor Carlson's coming from is most organizational reps are from paid organizations, but there are volunteer organizations that nobody's paying them. And should they be admitted? And I don't think it's the organizational part, it's the paid part that is Councillor Carlson's concern. If you are paid, if you are getting paid by somebody, you don't get an honorarium. Even if you're an organizational person and you're not getting paid, why wouldn't we give you an honorarium? I think that if I'm capturing Councillor Carlson's concern. So it's not the organizational, it's the paid part that we would not want to be double dipping on.
And also, thank you, Madam Chair, also not being exclusionary of. Occasionally, an organization appoints a board member who is unpaid, and if they're appointed to do work on our volunteer committee and we're paying everyone else, let's pay them. That's where I'm trying to get to.
Okay. So do you want to suggest an amendment there, or do you want to think about that? Because I also see Mayor Higgin would like to add into this as well.
Yeah, sure. Let me. I thought it had been covered by removing any reference to organizational reps. That they were just.
It's still no. Organizational reps are still in this policy, but we have removed all organizational reps from our committees. So the policy is there, but there's nobody to pay. So we could remove it because we've already removed them from the BCCs. So we could just ask for this line to be stricken, because we no longer have organizational reps. So if you're asking for an amendment, we could just ask that this line be removed from the policy.
If it wouldn't change anything in the city clerk's eyes, I see Ryan is buzzing in, then I'd be fine to remove that.
So Mr. Westerson, if you want to answer that specifically, and then we'll go to Mayor Higgins.
As the chair has indicated, there is no organizational reps sitting on any of our boards, commissions, committees per council's direction out of the boards, commissions, committees route, excepting the exception that council made to the Animal Welfare Committee that is coming back in Q4 2025 for a review. So if you kept the policy as presented right now, it's saying you're not providing an honorarium to any organizational rep, the current organizational reps on the Animal Welfare Committee would not receive an honorarium.
So recommended you strike this from the policy.
That's where I'm at.
Okay. All right.
And we have the backup of council contingencies will cover you, Bonnie.
Mayor Higgin, if you'd like to go ahead.
Good. I'm really glad for this conversation we just had, because when I first put up my hand, I think a lot of the discomfort that I felt is been covered, and I just to probably a simple yes or no. So we do have, and I thought we did, and I've just maybe heard different. If somebody's coming from an organization, which we're going to strike this if we understand, and are being paid by the organization and come on their time, they would not be paid an honorarium.
So at this time, we have removed all organizational reps except for the animal bylaw because we haven't changed that one yet. So right now, the only way you could be a volunteer is if you do it on your own time without an organization behind you. So they would get the honorarium because they're doing it on their own time. Right now, though, unless we strike this out of the policy, then the few that are left on the Animal Welfare Committee would not get paid. So we are recommending it gets removed. Just because we've given these guys to the end of this year to work on their committee to recommend changes, and we just don't want to lose them in this year, and this just kind of cleans everything up, ties this policy in with the changes we've made to the committees.
Perfect, thank you.
So we're recommending that can be removed. Okay, any other questions from anyone on this? All right. This motion then, we're striking that one clause. We are recommending that the policy be amended that regardless of who appoints them, if they're on RBCC, they got an honorarium, and recommending, as we said earlier, that we pay the back pay as well. All of that now together. So with one additional amendment to what I read out, is everyone good if this motion goes forward to question? All right, back to you, Councillor Schmidt-Rempel, with your motion.
Okay, so we're just adding in here, striking clause 3?
Yeah, the organizational clause.
So, yeah. So with that amendment and seeing no others, then I would call for the vote.
Okay, question's been called. All in favor? All right, that passes unanimously as well. All right. All right, we're not even half done, guys. Just keeping you in track here. 6.5, CC 69, property tax cancellation request policy. So we have a new policy in front of us, which gives some format around who gets to bring forward tax cancellation and who doesn't. All right. Who is speaking to this one, Ms. No, yes, there you are. Sorry, come on forward. Did I capture it correctly? You're asking us to recommend that this be adopted. And what you're basically doing is giving a framework. There is no financial allocation. There are slight differences between commercial and residential, but is there any highlights you want us to know about this new policy?
Thank you, Ms. Chair. Yes, that is correct. Really, what we just want to do is have some sort of structure in place so that there's a transparent process, that when the property owners are coming to request for tax cancellation, we can, as administration, recommend what we can easily support and what we won't support, but still can bring forward in front of council for council to make that choice.
Okay, and to be fair, if this passes as written, administration must follow the parameters. Council has the option of saying, this is the framework we're using, but it's still council's decision.
Correct.
Okay, so there are the two parts to it. And again, opening this to the community, anybody wish to speak on the property tax cancellation request policy? I see no members of the public, so we will go to committee, starting with Councillor Middleton Hope.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It is a question in regards to process, and I'm wondering through the city manager to whomever among his staff might be in a position to answer this. Are there any provisions of the Municipal Governments Act or other governing legislation that would prevent the city manager from actually responding to such requests? As opposed to these coming to council all the time. You know.
Yeah, I think Ms. Shigehiro will respond to that one.
So the MGA does require that to be council's decision. It can't be delegated.
Okay, can't be delegated. Good. Thank you.
That's the reason, yeah, we have all the decision-making at this level. Okay, any other questions? Councillor Carlson, do you have a question? Or are you in
Yes.
for debate? Okay, go right
No,
ahead.
thank you. Under item C, 1.2B, it talks about only penalties for a period not exceeding 2 months. Can someone just discuss the rationale for that? And I guess my way of thinking was if someone came to council, and they got in their requests and it took time, and over summer we weren't meeting and they were getting penalties, or they were out of town or in hospital or something, the period could exceed 2 months. I'm just, the rationale for limiting it to 2 months penalties only.
Thank you through the chair. Thank you, Councillor Carlson, for that question. Excellent question. We really strongly recommend that people actually still continue to pay so that they don't rack up a lot of penalties over time, and also address the issue sooner than later so that we don't have people coming almost a year later and saying, hey, what about these penalties from 9 or 10 months ago? And I'm still not paying it, and I just want to wait till council sees this. So it's an incentive to get them to just still clean it up and then ask more for a credit back afterwards, depending on what council's decision is.
But remember, Councillor Carlson, that is under council's part. So this is a framework, but does not limit council from choosing a different option depending on what information is provided to council. So, right, council is just being provided parameters that, yeah.
I just saw it says will only be supported by administration. Council can do what council wants.
Well, what 5 members of council want.
Exactly. No, but I do appreciate that it is sort of the incentive to keep your account current and take care of it sooner rather than later. I think we had one recently that was 2 years out of date. So yes, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, this is to provide as much support to council as possible, because again, it's not something done all the time, but it is, yeah, in the role there. All right, any other questions on this? I don't see anybody else in the queue. Councillor Middleton Hope, this is your motion. Be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee recommends that Council adopt policy CC69, property tax cancellation request, as provided in attachment 1. Councillor Middleton Hope.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just wondering if there are any other questions, comments, or debate from my colleagues.
I don't see anybody in the queue.
No, he's silent. Then I'll call the question.
Question's been called. All in favor? And that passes unanimously. Thank you so much for bringing that forward. Moving now to 6.6 CC73, disposition of city assets policy. So this one, again, is a new policy. It comes through, we get requests for ambulances and everything else. So this one looks at what is the policy around city assets, and I like this one. Basically, the policy is look at admin's procedures.
Absolutely. So
all right, if you'd like to speak to it,
everything.
Go right ahead if you want to speak to it and just give us a little overview.
Perfect, thank you. Yes, so what we're looking to do here is effectively we're looking to effectively close any gaps that may have existed and really avoid scenarios where entities may approach people and look for specific disposition. So basically by putting it through the admin policy, that loophole is no longer available, and what we're now doing is making sure that we provide a robust and defensible process where entities would be able to, for example, put forward a statement of capability to secure anything were it to be donated. But in general, the first and probably best option that we typically look at is going to be internal usage specifically, and/or to dispose of it and return the highest valuation to the corporation given the financials.
Okay, thank you for that summary. So we will again ask if there's any members of the public who wish to speak on CC 73, disposition of city assets policy. I see no one, so we will go to questions from council, starting first with Councillor Middleton Hope.
Thank you. In reviewing the policy, please clarify for me a couple of things. So this ostensibly deals with tangible assets, but I don't see that it actually deals with structures. So is there another avenue to deal specifically with structures, so buildings, and how we divest ourselves of those assets?
So that's not contemplated through this policy specifically?
I didn't think so. Right. Okay.
Yeah, that the real estate kind of has explicit exclusions from procurement process in general.
Okay. Did you want to weigh in on that, Mr. City Manager?
Certainly, I'll look at Mr. Ulrich. I keep forgetting he's over there. And it at a point in time where there's any of the land or building assets, we would go through a formal process of listing that asset, typically for public sale or disposal, and it's very infrequent. I'm looking around the room if anybody knows the last time we did something like that, other than our typical land processes, of course. So it would be different than this. If there was like land where we have direct offers to purchase for investment in the city, building something, that is different yet again.
I'm just thinking in terms of a review of the current assets that we have and divesting ourselves of some of the capital costs associated with some of those buildings and realizing capital out of that may be allocated to different purposes.
So if you can, in September, where there's more discussion talking about assets that would be surplus. So that's the piece I'm talking about here. The others are non-surplus assets for city development and growth purposes.
And what's happening in September?
We will be talking about the assets that could be considered surplus to the city's needs.
Okay, so we'll have that conversation at council or governance.
Economic.
Economic, yeah.
Okay, good, thanks.
So just to make sure, again, here's a new policy. How does it all tie in? How does this tie with asset management? Does this tie with asset management? Is it separate because it's too small? Is there any connection?
Thank you, Councillor Crowson, and I'll start. Then, Mr. Kasser can jump in there as well along the journey. But it doesn't directly tie. However, there's an indirect tie into it. So obviously, everything that our asset or some of this could be. When I say assets, in my world, I'm talking tangible capital assets from that part of the larger pieces. When those assets become no longer required by the city, whether it's an ambulance, school bus, or any of those kind of pieces, they're deemed to be now surplus. What this would do would fall into that lines, and otherwise we would be maintaining those assets for a longer period of time. So there is a kind of a link, and really what the end of it is that no, we no longer think it's viable.
Asset management says kick it out.
Kick it out.
This policy
would come through, and really what this is, as Mr. Kasser mentioned on this, is it's the capstone policy for council, so that quite often we've seen different requests, and sometimes at the exact same time coming in from different groups. Now there's an equitable and transparent way to do that through the procurement surplus policies, and really all this policy is doing is saying push it to that process, and then of course everybody has access to be able to either bid or go through that way we would deal with it.
The other thing is, I mean, we've already been talking, this is not land. This is like ambulances, this is stuff like that. And this is, I think one of the things that might be helpful in this is some examples, right? Because we are going to have people going, so what is actually involved? And I'm thinking we have members of the Galt Museum here, they de-accession, and then it becomes surplus items. Is that linked to this? Is that a separate item? So that's the sort of stuff since we haven't had a policy here, we haven't actually tested this policy. So I think there are some things that we are going to be thinking through going, is it entirely corporate wide? Is it just for vehicles? Is it like, what do we see? So I wouldn't mind some examples of what we're looking for here, what might be actually considered special cases that isn't covered here. I think this can go forward as it is, but I think next time we review it and have had some time to work with it, I think you are going to find it's going to be the cases that test this that are going to be interesting to see. Because I absolutely like this because, yeah, we do have Rotary in different groups with great intentions going, when you have an ambulance, we want it, great. We like to be able to give those things, but as a corporation, we haven't thought a lot of this through, and this is the first kick at the can. But I think that can is going to be kicked around a few times when we actually try it out in the real world. So just some things to think about how it might already be amended. All right. Yeah, Councillor Middleton Hope?
Just one comment in regards to a portion of that in regards to asset forfeiture that's not included in this policy. So we're clear on that it's not included in this policy?
Correct, yes.
Good, okay, thank you. Just for those that are not familiar with asset forfeiture, that's by the police, and there's another federal process that they have to undergo. Okay, thank you.
If I may, just read what is PUR 06-PR 01. It says this procedure applies to all tangible, capital, and intangible assets owned by the City of Lethbridge, including but not limited to equipment, vehicles, furniture, electronic devices, and software, land, permanent buildings, structures, and items seized by police are exempt from this policy.
Yeah, but that does still go back to something deaccession, because you could deaccession something that is an electronic device, right? Like I said, there are going to be some things that are going to test it. And there are going to be some people going, I don't need a list of all, but just give me a sort of like, this is included, this isn't sort of thing. All right. Any other questions around this? Because we all want to get a good deal. We all watch those auctions on TV. All right, Councillor Schmidt-Rempel, this is your motion. Be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee recommends that Council adopt policy CC 73, disposition of city assets as provided in attachment 1. Councillor.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for the work on this. I just worked through this, not this exact policy, but this policy with another organization. So certainly appreciate what you've brought forward here. We will look forward to seeing how this works over the upcoming years. And then when we have an opportunity to review, we can understand how it's worked, what we've missed, where gaps might be, and then rectify that. It aligns with our other city policies. Pretty straightforward, and I like that. I mean, it deals with the disposal of our assets in a fair and equitable manner. So thank you very much for that. It's a great policy. Thank you.
That's your debate?
That's my debate.
All right.
And I would call for the vote.
Okay. Question's been called. All in favor? All right. That one passes unanimously as well. I think you get to escape us now. I don't think you're still on the agenda after this. Thank you. All right, moving to 6.7, Galt Museum and Archives 2024 Annual Report. So the annual report was in your package. This also links to the next closed item. I am thinking that closed item we will want to move into closed unless everybody's like, no, I know exactly what I want to say. Or do you want to go into closed on that item? Do you want to deal with 6.7 first and then close? Oh. They are two separate items, but same people. So do we want to do close first or the 6.7 first? Okay, we will deal with 6.7 and then if we need to go into close. So we have received the 2024 annual report for information from the Galt Museum and Archives. Thank you very much, Dr. Newstead, for the report that is in front of us. We will start with members of the community if there are any questions. And I don't see any questions, so we will then move to council if there are, or committee if there are any questions. Okay, we will start with Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Dr. Newstead, for bringing this forward. My biggest question is we see a lot of numbers of what was achieved in 2024. My question is, how does that compare to previous years? How has the Galt Museum grown in different areas with the different numbers, different visitation, revenues, all that? We see the 2024 numbers, but we don't see any comparators to past years. So how has that changed?
Through the chair to Councillor Schmidt-Rempel, can everyone hear me? I noticed that as an oversight as we were sort of prepping, doing in the final parts of prepping this gigantic report. So what I actually did is in the submission letter, the cover report, we've got some really good comparative numbers here. So for some of the big things that we saw over 2023 is we saw a 16% increase in public use across all museum services. So this is visitation, programming, and outreach. So the programming that we're doing kind of off-site. We saw a really impressive 22% increase in education programming participants over 2023, which I'm particularly proud of. I think that's a real good leading marker of the museum returning to pre-pandemic levels of service standard, or service use, which is really important to me. We saw an increase in public programming participants by 20% over 2023, with over 6,000 guests enjoying 118 museum program and events in 2024. And I don't have the number quite off the top of my head, but we did slightly fewer museum programs to the public, but we had higher visitation and higher participation in the slightly fewer programs that we did. This included nearly 1,000 participants for the Blackfoot language program that we did in February 2023, which is excellent. We also saw a 2% increase in gross sales in the gift shop, the Galt gift shop, and the revenue for the Fort gift shop was about the same as it was last year, so it stayed stable. We saw a 6% increase in archival research requests over 2023, and again, that's a leading indicator that people are coming back to the museum from that dip that we saw in the pandemic period. We saw a stable amount of facility rental income with about the same amount of rental guests as we had in 2023. Rental income, I am finding, as I'm getting sort of used to the ebbs and flows of how the museum is getting used, kind of depends on what events and what community organizations are doing year to year, and sometimes community organizations don't do events like every year. And it also kind of depends on the wedding industry as well, because that's kind of affects who's coming and using the space as facility rentals. We did also see a 10% increase in Fort Whoop-Up visitors over 2024, including 1,000 attendees, nearly 1,000 attendees, I think it was like 983, to the Christmas event that they did at the fort. And we also saw 683 visitors to the Indigenous Peoples Day on June 21st last year, which was really good. So across the board, we're seeing kind of an increase, which is really encouraging to me. As you know, I took over the post in June 2024. So I came in kind of half year. And I want to extend a huge thank you to Ms. Kleisinger and Mr. Harper from Community Services for assisting my staff in that interim period between CEOs and ensuring that we had quite a successful year in 2024.
Okay, thank you very much. So we're seeing moderate increases across the board in all programs, all areas, visitation, everything like that. So my next question then is, how are we marketing Galt Museum and Fort Whoop-Up as a visitor destination, and how are we growing that awareness outside of our Lethbridge community?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Councillor Schmidt-Rempel, for the question. So I come from a very tourism-focused background. I used to run the Atlas Coal Mine National Historic Site in Drumheller. It was very, very, very visitor-focused. So before I came in 2024, they weren't all that focused on especially growing the visitation from outside of the region to the Galt Museum and Fort Whoop-Up. I have started to sort of change that. We're starting to work much more with Tourism Lethbridge as well as Travel Alberta in ensuring that the visitor experiences that we have at both the museum and the fort are being marketed effectively, not just through our channels, which is like social media, paid advertising in a variety of different venues, but also through the marketing apparatus of Travel Alberta and Tourism Lethbridge as well. So making sure that our messaging is also consistent across platforms as well, because that's one of the audits that I did over the last year, is ensuring that the messaging that we have out there reflects accurately with what we're actually doing at the Fort Museum, because we do have a great product for visitation at both sites, and making sure that it's clear to visitors what's available in Lethbridge for museums and heritage.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Carlson, you're next in queue.
Oh, sorry, Madam Chair. I took my hand down because I wanted to say the report answered all my questions, except the ones that Councillor Schmidt-Rampel just asked. So I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So it is always fun when we get the annual reports. We get lots of numbers, lots of pretty pictures. Well, it's hard to know where it stands. Is the GALT successful?
That's a great question. Thank you, Madam Chair. So I would like to see the GALT in the next couple of years return to pre-pandemic levels of visitation. This is something that when I came on, I was a little surprised at the sort of visitation levels that we saw over the last couple of years. With the other museums sort of across Alberta, I'm very connected with sort of how visitation rates have rebounded after the pandemic. And I was expecting the GALT to see a higher rebound in 2024. Obviously, I came in June, so it's kind of a freight train, so you kind of have to do your planning quite a bit before. So that's one of the things that I'm working very hard with my team right now, is to bring the GALT and the Fort back to pre-pandemic visitation levels. I can tell you that we probably are going to hit that with school groups this year. I hope. We've got a lot of indications that we are certainly surpassing 2024's school group numbers, and are getting into revenue from school groups that is reflecting pre-pandemic levels. And I believe we will also get there with the Fort in the next kind of year or so. The GALT is... The GALT numbers are a little bit more complicated because we've kind of changed our programming from pre-pandemic levels, so from pre-pandemic period. But I think we are seeing kind of a drastic increase now of visitation as we're marketing the place as a museum for everyone, right? So, and that's sort of the big change that I've been really implementing with all of our staff is ensuring that the programming that we have and everything that we do at the museum is for the community and is for everyone. And my goal is to get everyone in Lethbridge to visit the museum at least once a year. So doing a little bit more market research and community consultation to make sure that we're providing events and exhibits and everything that people really want to come to. So that's part of my job. And I'm hoping that we'll be getting back to those pre-pandemic levels and then beyond the pre-pandemic levels in the next couple of years.
So building on that, what is the one thing you're putting your greatest effort into you'd most like to see changed?
I think it's the museum is for everyone. So changing, I talk a lot with my marketing director, Aaron Trozo. So he is also new. So he started in November last year. And when we first got together and we first started thinking about sort of how can we embed the museum a little bit more in the community of Lethbridge now, because the community has changed from what it was pre-pandemic, right? The city's growing in massive quantities. There's lots of new people here. How do we sort of make the museum more accessible? So I think one of the legacy changes that I really want to see with this museum, with my work, is that we're not as formal an institution. We do very good work. We're doing national level work. We're very, very proactive. Everything we do is very, very high quality, but we want to make sure that everyone feels welcome there. So what we call it, we're doing a vibe shift. And you'll notice that with the social media and stuff that we're doing. It's a little bit more irreverent. It's a little less serious. It's a little bit more welcoming. And we just want everyone to come to the museum.
You have used the word welcoming numerous times. Who hasn't felt welcome in that building?
So museums traditionally have a number of different community groups that don't actually, or community segments that don't actually feel welcome at museums. Traditionally, one of the biggest community groups that have felt rather unwelcome at museums has been the Indigenous community. And that's one thing that we work very hard at the Galt, is to ensure that our Indigenous community members do feel consistently welcome when they're in the space. You also get folks that traditionally just don't go to museums and feel kind of uncomfortable in very formalized spaces. One of the demographics that I was really thrilled to get in to the museum for our beer festival last year was the ranch dads. So the ranching families that often don't come and don't feel comfortable in a really formalized museum space. So they wouldn't necessarily feel comfortable, some of this demographic, coming to like an art gallery in very formalized space. But when they can come to a space, enjoy an experience that kind of ties with what they sort of do, they see themselves in the museum and they feel comfortable there. So.
Okay. All right. I don't see any other questions, so thank you very much for answering those. I do have a motion from Councillor Carlson. Be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee received the Galt Museum and Archives 2024 Annual Report for information. Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I really appreciate the report and the answers from the CEO. I know that we'll be forwarding this to our colleagues for review. They'll be excited to see it as well. I appreciate the direction the Galt has been taking and the comments about how we're moving forward with the Galt. So unless there's any further comments, I'll just thank everyone and call for the vote.
Okay, question's been called. All in favor? Thank you kindly. All right, since we are linking the closed session with this, we will now bring forward a motion from whichever member of the committee would like to. Be it resolved that we do now enter a closed meeting at 2:47 p.m. to discuss confidential matters with respect to item 7.1, as per sections 29, advice from officials, and 32, legal privilege of the Access to Information Act. Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
I'll call for the vote.
Question's been called. All in favor? All right, we are moving into closed. So thank you. Unless you are linked to 7.1, this is your chance to run away. Run away. Of closed session, I have motion for 7.1, boards, commissions, and committee matter. Be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee recommend that Council direct administration to prepare amendments to Bylaw 4890, Galt Museum and Archives Bylaw, as noted in option 1 of the closed report, and return to City Council with the proposed amendment in Q4 2025. And further be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee direct that the closed meeting documents, discussions, and report with respect to the boards, commissions, and committee matters remains confidential pursuant to Sections 29, advice from officials of the Access to Information Act. And it says Sections 29, should just be Section 29, but that's okay. And this motion is Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
I'll call for the vote.
Question has been called. All in favor? And any opposed? And that passes unanimously. And now brings us to the reason Ms. Hilford has been sitting quietly for the entire meeting. Brings us to the orientation recommended for the new council, 2025 council orientation 90-day plan. Ms. Hilford requested that any members of council, present council, who want to meet with her could, to suggest how to improve the orientation for the next one. Then the city clerk and her staff have created this one, which we are hoping to recommend on and adopt as the orientation plan for incoming council. Ms. Hilford, anything specific you should let us know about this?
Thank you, Chair Croson. Yes, as you mentioned, we've got the 90-day plan for members of council elected to office after the 2025 municipal election. And as per council orientation policy CC7, council is to approve the orientation plan before the election. The orientation plan does reflect engagement of past observations and learnings. And some of the revisions, just briefly, that are included, the duration of the upcoming orientation will be over 3 months instead of 1 month. The plan is designed to provide information at a high-level basis that council will encounter or apply early in their term, with deeper dives later in the term as they occur or are presented to council. Orientation days will be half days instead of full days. This orientation plan complies with the Municipal Government Act. And then after the 90 days, a consistent half day a month for the entire term of council will be allotted to orientations, trainings, additional engagements, anything that council needs. Also included in attachment 2 is a calendar view so that you can see at a glance easily what it looks like. Also included meetings in blue, the election in green, and in purple, other conferences like the AM convention. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. We're looking for feedback, see if we hit the mark or what we missed or what you want added or amended, but at least you have something here to review right now.
2 things have come up in today's meeting. One is letting council know, the future council know, what is in the, I'm going to call it the swag room, and how to access that in the process and that. And then Councillor Middleton Hope was wondering if they will get training on, I'm going to say FOIP, I know that's not the act anymore, but is that training provided about, the expectations for their technology use, et cetera, or does that need to be added, or is it already there?
So with regards to swag, I do not have it in the plan, so if you wanted to make an amendment, I would suggest maybe October 28th when you're doing the onboarding, we could add it there, or when we're doing the advocacy session, maybe a little bit in both. But as for the ATIA Act session training, it's kind of embedded in a few places. It's October 31st, the governance session training. So that's when we go over your agendas and closed meetings. So there's a little bit there. November 1st, the elected officials session, one second, I'll just have to bring that up. November 1st, yeah, the elected official education program. They'll go over it there a little bit. And then your deeper dive will be on
For some reason. I'm surprised nobody running for council is worried about what their orientation might look like, but there is no one. Go ahead, Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First and foremost, thank you, Bonnie and your team, City Clerk Hilford and your team for this. I think you took a lot of our feedback from the previous council orientation and incorporate. So I appreciate that. Another point I'd like to make is that we should have made ensured that we made council full-time before they get sworn in, because I think it's going to be a pretty hefty load for them, but I'm sure they're up to the challenge. Question I had on budget. In here, it says that there's a total of $34,000 for the swearing in, for the orientation, and for ongoing PD. Is that correct?
Thank you, Councillor Carlson. Yes, that is correct. It's been $34,000 for a 4-year term for quite some time now, and we've managed to keep within that budget. Of course, we pay the external presenters and for facilities if you want to do any off-site training, but we do seem to manage.
It seems very low, but that's just that is just a comment, because I really appreciate the adding of the half day a month ongoing training. I think that's brilliant. Something that's not in here, but it is sort of referred to, so it may be outside of the purview of this report. Strategic planning retreat. It's contemplated that'll happen in 2026, correct? Or strategic planning.
I believe it's going to start in Q1 2026, but Mr. Matthews would have more detailed information on that.
Okay, and thank you for that. My only question around that was the $34,000 that's in budget. I've been an advocate for this for quite some time. Get council together, get them out of town into a place where they can't be on their phones, they can't be distracted by friends, family, meetings, etc., and get a strategic plan, or at least a guideline, a framework together. It accomplishes, really focused work, and it accomplishes council getting to know each other. As we talked with our technology, we all have different styles. We all have different tools. We all have different skill sets, expertises. We all have family, friends, lives, that it gives us a chance to get to know each other. And so I don't know if that is a different budget item or if that has been contemplated. I'd really like to make that recommendation that the 9 of you get out of town, get your heads down, do some work, but also have some time to get to know each other and how you can work more effectively together. So that's my question, I guess, is there planning for a strategic planning retreat? And if you want to blame someone, I'll make the motion so that you can blame Councillor Carlson for pushing for this. And is that within the same $34,000 budget?
So there is about 3 questions there. Why don't we start with, would something like that be within the budget? And then is there a desire to put something like that in? Let's start there with the budget though first.
So I'll start off here, and I may need Miss Hilfinger's, Hilford, sorry, wow, where am I? Thank you. Sorry, Bonnie. Anyways, in regards to make sure that I get it here, I don't believe that going out of town or so forth would be included in the existing budget there on it. However, that's not to say that council hasn't done those kind of things in the past, or that there's different avenues even within the city where you could get away from City Hall per se. So there is options from the university. I know that I see you shaking your head. I think if members of council wanted to take a retreat, and go somewhere out of town, that is possible. What we could do is look at options for that. And of course, we would probably look at fairly close, so it's not too much of a travel distance. And then also take a look at your existing travel budgets within council to be the option for using those dollars. So in the first year that your existing travel budget could actually be used, a portion of that could be used for the travel to said area on that, or we could also look at council contingencies as that side of it there. So I guess, long story short, if council wanted to do that, we would just take a look at that option and give some costing back of what that would be to be able to take it, that planning session offwards. I guess what we would also need to know is whether you want administration to be there, a component of it, because that would also require some administration to be there as well.
Yeah.
Only if
Lots
you,
to lots to consider. We've tried it several different ways over the course of my time on council. In town never seems to work because people do leave if you've got a captive audience. And really, a lot of it is, and I'm sure I'll get pilloried in the public for this, but the outside hours, you buckle down for 8-9 hours a day, you do your strategic plan, and then at night you get to talk to each other and figure out what makes each other tick and how we could best work, how you could best work together. So I'm a big advocate for it. I know the community always goes, oh no, they're going out of town. Really, every community pretty much does it. We're kind of an outlier, and I think it'll make council much more effective going forward. So just a suggestion. Thanks.
And again, you can bring it forward as an amendment at the end of the discussion if you want, or you can leave it there as just a discussion piece. Councillor Middleton Hope.
Thank you. And it may be obvious to some, but I don't see it. This is a significant time commitment by the clerk's office that you're embarking on. How will this affect you and your people?
We are just coordinating the orientation. We are not facilitating.
I spent many years developing lesson plans and also developing strategic deliveries for groups of people. It takes time. So I'm wondering, have you the capacity to do this? Do your people have the capacity to do this?
It's going to be a collaborative effort, obviously, from the subject matter experts in the organization. So they will be facilitating and delivering and developing their own orientations. We will just be coordinating it for them and helping.
So the answer is
We'll be
yes, we
doing
have
it.
the capacity?
Yes, we have the capacity,
Okay.
and we're happy to do it.
Good, thanks.
Okay, brings us back to the SWAG advocacy one. If we were going to add that, is there a logical place to add that if that is sort of the will of the committee? And again, it mostly is, be aware this exists, how it ties in with advocacy, you know, that sort of stuff would be what we'd be hoping for if that is added. Does anybody see a natural tie-in? Or maybe I'm thinking it's important and everybody else is going, oh no, don't worry about it. I'm assuming there is an advocacy day. I know I read it, but where is the advocacy day? Could it be tied into November 7th? I know that is an outside presenter, but could there be half an hour of that where it's like, let's take you on a tour? So could we add that there quite naturally?
I think that would be an appropriate place. There is an external presenter, but also Mr. Gauthier will also be presenting the advocacy priorities. So that could be where we talk about the SWAG for advocacy.
Yeah, because I mean, I think we should call it like mechanisms for advocacy instead of SWAG, but SWAG just rolls off the tongue so much easier. And I think the public understands what we're talking about. This is stuff with a purpose, not just free stuff to hand out. All right, so would that recommend we add it as an amendment to add it to November 7th about how to use it effectively in the promotion of the community? Okay, Councillor Carls, oh, nope, sorry, Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
Thank you very much, Chair. I guess, and thank you very much, Ms. Hilford, for you and your team and the work that was done around this. Kind of tying back to the time commitment from the new councillors, or that's required for the new councillors that Councillor Carlson had mentioned. Should a new councillor have another job and not be able to take the time off because it is 3 months of half days, what are the consequences of a newly elected official not being able to attend this due to another job, due to childcare, due to adult parent care? any of those other needs that they might have.
Administration has not included anything like that in here. I don't think that would be our role to do that.
No, but what are the consequences of a newly elected official not attending these sessions?
Well, they would obviously miss valuable information about, learnings of the corporation, their role, administration, quite a bit of important information. I mean, we will have the information printed, but it's really good to be there to listen to it and hear what your colleagues are saying and the learnings and the experiences of the people that have been there in past years.
And is there anything that they may expect from the provincial government should they not be able to attend all of these sessions? Because it is mandatory training.
I'm sorry?
Because it is mandatory training from the province, is there anything as far as repercussions we might be expecting from the provincial government should they be able to not attend?
I haven't heard of any.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Carlson, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Helford. Just a quick, where, and I'm sorry, there's so many documents, I've been trying to read them, but occasionally you just miss something. Where is the discussion for incoming council around Lethbridge land or opportunity to Lethbridge? I think something that we often neglected in our term was our commitment as the board of directors of Lethbridge Land. So to sort of talk about strategic goals and the process, is that somewhere that I just didn't see?
We do not have it in the 90-day plan. We do have it scheduled tentatively for one of the ongoing monthly sessions.
Right.
One of the reasons is Mr. Laverty's pretty new in his role, and just to get him up to speed and have a good orientation. But if committee or council wanted that earlier, I'm sure we could accommodate that.
Okay, it's just something that I know over the last 4 years we sort of put on the back burner. We used to have at least yearly Board of Governance meetings for Lethbridge Land, and we sort of stopped that for some reason. Further to that, you've got a bit of an orientation to the BCC and committee process scheduled. What does that entail exactly? Is that representatives from our BCCs, or is that just, here's what they are, here's what they do, we need to appoint them tomorrow, go?
That would just be the whole process from, what they do for council, their role, how they are appointed. So it's not just the appointment process and the members in front of you, but it would entail the whole governance role of BCCs and the support that they provide council.
Okay, and I know that, and I'm just speaking with a different hat on, Green Acres has offered to come in and do a 15-minute presentation, because we always get questions on how Green Acres operates. What is the role? What's the mandate? What is the requisition process, et cetera? Is that in here somewhere? Is that part of the ongoing half days?
It would not be in the 90-day plan. I think if you have offers from one, you might have offers from many, and then it would be very hard to accommodate the 90-day plan and what council really needs to know in that time frame. So it's something that we could consider later in the half-day sessions that occur monthly.
Councillor Carlson, you could either recommend it going a half day, or you could make a motion to add on to this, that in 2026, governance have a BCC day, which we've had in the past, where representatives are invited in to give a 10-minute presentation to the committee and to the community about what they do, and to share any concerns with the committee. So we've had that in the past. We haven't seen it for a while, but you could have a BCC day again at governance, if you're not going to do it as part of the orientation.
Oh, thank you for that. Because one of the challenges, and Madam City Clerk, maybe you can help me here. I remember my first election in 2007, and our orientation was very minor. We showed up a day or two later, or right before the swearing in ceremony, the organizational meeting, and we had to fill in the chart of who's going to go on what committee, who we're going to appoint. We hadn't had time to really know what the committees were about or really review folks who were interested. And I remember that first year at the meeting, hands went up, the gavel came down, and the mayor came over and said, oh, so you got appointed to CUDA, you leave tomorrow, pack your bags, there's a conference. Is there any way to extend that process so members of council have a little more time to understand what they're actually agreeing to or appointing people to?
Yeah, we have seen that occur, that issue with the time frame. So what we have done is, we did this last term, is we had the swearing in on 1 week, and then a week later we had the organizational meeting. So it's not all occurring on the same day, because it is a rush of information, and you do need some time to understand, your role and the role of BCCs and the appointment process. So there is a week in between there, and we can't make it any longer because of the legislation in the MGA, but I hope it does help. And any feedback you want to provide, we are open.
Thank you. And that was just one of the challenges, I guess, is that the legislation says thou shalt have your organizational meeting, thou shalt appoint all these people, and you haven't had time to even get your feet wet. So yeah, I wish there was a better way to do it, but I guess not. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any other people in the queue for questions. So we can then move to the motion. It is coming from Councillor Middleton Hope. Be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee recommend that Council 1 adopt the 2025 Council Orientation 90-day plan as provided in Attachment 1, and 2, direct the City Clerk to book half-day placeholders in Council's calendars once per month for ongoing continuous learning, including but not limited to tours, orientations, and engagement sessions for Council commencing after the 90-day orientation. Now, the only thing I might suggest, as I know if Council adopts it, it goes into our records, but could we also put that up on the page that people looking to run to Council also see? Just as a, hey, if you get elected, this has to be part of your schedule right after the election. So can we make sure it's posted somewhere appropriate? I don't know if that has to be part of the motion, but I don't want to pass this and then surprise some new people on council who are like, well, what do you mean I now have a whole bunch of orientation days I have to book?
Yeah, we are planning to put it on the election page for sure, where any candidates would be looking and to get information. So it will be there for sure as soon as it passes in council.
Perfect. Oh, and there is a third amendment. Thank you, Mr. Westerson. 3, added discussion on the promotional items and its role in advocacy as part of the November 7th, 2025 session. Now, was there any other amendments that we, kind of tossed around that we'd like to formalize on here as a potential amendment? Councillor Carlson, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't know if it needs to be here, or maybe it's a motion arising, or just, I'll put it out there in the ether. I would like to recommend that council at least do some, or direct administration to do some preliminary planning for a strategic planning retreat. I'm only saying that because if you leave it until October 27th, every place is booked and all the facilitators are booked. So I'm just wondering if, and I'll only put this forward if my colleagues think that it may be something they'd be in.
Okay.
It's not the orientation, so a motion
No,
rising,
sorry,
perhaps?
Mr. Westerson, I was just saying, we would recommend procedurally that you do it as a motion arising, because it's not
Gotcha.
specifically with the orientation, but it came out of the discussion on the orientation.
Perfect.
And again, things that could be canceled if the next council decides differently, but gives them the options, I presume, if they want to go that route. But that's a different motion. So we'll focus on this one and then go from there. Councillor Middleton Hope?
I'm just looking at number 3. It seems almost incongruent with the rest of the motion.
No, it's simply because if we're going to adopt the orientation plan, that's not part of the orientation plan, like, because it's something we brought forward. So it's just
Yeah.
saying, make sure you add that to the November 7th. Again, Mr. Westerson and I were talking about whether we thought it should. We wanted to fail on the safe part of going, put it in there so it doesn't get forgot.
I don't dispute it going into a motion. I'm just not sure that it doesn't seem to fit this motion.
It's adding to part of the orientation. I see it as fitting, but again, open to,
Well, I don't see it, and, but if others do, that's fine.
Ms. Hilford, does this tie in with the orientation?
I'm being picky for procedure, but I would say amend the 90-day plan to
Okay.
include.
Amend the 90-day plan to include a discussion on the promotional items? Okay.
Sure. What's that?
It was also formed part of your discussion on item 6.3 today, where you did recommend that something like this occur, so this is just formalization of it as
Yeah.
well.
Amend the 90-day plan to include a discussion. Okay,
So we're making an amendment to this?
yes.
Okay.
All right. Are you comfortable with it? Because it is your motion.
I'll wait for the
Wait for the amendment.
change, yeah.
The amendment?
Additionally, there is nothing in this, whether there needs to be or not, that would direct administration and/or the clerk's office to ensure that this is part of the preemptive package provided to prospective applicants to the council process.
Well, as Ms. Hilford said, it will be going on there, but if you want to put that in writing, I don't think that's an issue. If you
Yeah.
want to say, and make sure this is shared with all prospective council.
Yeah.
So we can certainly add that as number 4,
Yeah.
because you're going to do it anyways, but we might as well just say, that way anyone looking at this knows we are worried about them making sure they understand what they'll be jumping into. 'Cause that fire hose is big.
Yeah. Lastly, there doesn't appear to be anything in the wording that identifies the prescription, which is provincial as opposed to the city is making this up. So there is a requirement under the Municipal Governments Act, I believe it is,
That we must do an orientation?
that we must do an orientation. And so I would like to see that in there as well, that indicates that this is province-wide. It's not just the city of Lethbridge that's doing it.
That would be a whereas statement, right?
It could very
Which we
well be.
normally don't do on these. I think anybody could be directed to this tape that. Oh, and there is also a policy that states under the MGA. So they could be directed to the policy.
So how would a prospective candidate be directed to the policy?
Ms. Hilford, if you have something to add? Oh, we shut you on and off and on, you're on again.
Yeah, I have trouble with this because I have a different process up there, so. I'm sorry, what was the question about the policy?
No, I'm sorry, you get one kick at it.
How would somebody running understand that this is provincial-wide, that orientations are directed under the MGA from the government?
And
or
that
from
it's also,
provincial
there's a
legislation?
requirement. Now, I presume, because we touched on this earlier, there are no consequences for not attending, other than you don't learn, but
And you
there
don't
are
serve
no
the public well.
consequences for not attending.
So Councillor Croson, it is in the report, but we could put it front and center on the plan that's adopted and say, as per the Municipal Government Act, mandatory training.
Is
We
provided.
could make it more prominent, if you
Yeah.
like. And also, I just wanted to mention that we will be having sessions for candidates in the summer, so that they know the time commitment, they know what's coming, they know the sessions and the information, and they have an idea of what the role is like.
there's also some requirement for people applying to a job to learn about the job to which they are applying.
That's true, but we'll help them along with that. If they have
You
any
are so
questions, they
kind
can
and
contact
thoughtful.
us for sure.
And better to hear from the city clerk's office than one of our colleagues who misrepresents the amount of time that actually is required.
And just further to your question there, Councillor, and Ms. Hilford touched on it, Section 201.1 of the MGA, actually, it is mandatory for each councillor to attend the orientation.
The orientation.
But it doesn't
But
say how
not the
much of the
ongoing training.
orientation.
It is mandatory to attend the 90-day portion in the Act.
Yeah.
Okay, do we feel we've sufficiently beat this over the head?
I think this horse is dead and buried under 10 feet of concrete.
Good.
All right, and it is still your motion.
All right, I'm just going to look at Councillor Carlson because he often has an addendum. None? Seeing none. All right, this is a good process. This is a good strategy moving forward for members of council. I think it'll prepare them earlier than having to learn over the course of time, meaning it may take them 3 or 4 years to really understand how council functions. I think this will help speed that process up. And so if there are no other comments or considerations, then we'll call a question.
All right, question has been called. All in favor? And yes, we have put this together to try to help the next council survive because everybody was told, oh, it's just a really part-time job.
Yeah.
Oh, that is funny. All right, Councillor Carlson, if you wish to do a motion arising, this is your chance. Mr. Westerson has tried to capture it, but essentially what you're looking at is direct administration to do some planning to plan a retreat out of town. And recommended is that the incoming council look at doing a retreat out of town, but that basically gives them options to do it. And if they cancel, that's up to them, but at least gives them options because trying to book it quickly would probably not work. Yeah. And that would be location, but also a potential person to run it.
That sounds exactly what I was going to try and put forward.
Right. And again,
And
providing
yes.
them options that we think would set them up for success, knowing it is their choice as a new council to follow it or not.
Yeah, I would recommend they follow it, but you're right, it is up to them.
All right, was that gobbledygook easily understood, Mr. Westerson? Because it is easy to just say, well, if I just run and let my dog out, or if I just run and do this one errand, I'll be right back.
Yeah, it is a challenge. And I've done them all different ways. I've done them in our city facilities, in a facility still in Lethbridge, but not a city facility. We went to Waterton, and the ones where you get away, it lets you really focus. It brings in just the folks, lack of distractions, and I know it sounds terrible to citizens that, oh, look, they're traveling on our budget, but it will make for a much more effective council. It's a small towny amount of money to pay, especially if we use our existing travel budgets for it. I think Mr. Matthews is brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how the travel budget's set up, is if you need it for city work, it's to be used. And if you think this is a priority, use it for that.
And it would be a great priority. But one thing I just cannot stress enough is the, what's the word, networking? It's not even that. It's just trust building, or at least knowledge building of your colleagues. It's much easier to work with people and understand how they work and get things done more efficiently, more effectively for our community. So I think it'd be an awesome thing for you all to consider, and I hope it comes to pass. And you can always blame former Councillor Carlson.
And we would if that came to that. All right, so here's the motion arising as we've done. The only thing not in here, and I know the question was asked, is there an expectation that ELT would be added? And so you can talk to that after I read this out. Be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee recommend that Council direct administration to begin the planning and organizing of strategic planning for Council for Q1 2026 and include potential options for locations and processes for these sessions.
Yeah, and thank you, Madam Chair. I think I've spoken on this enough. I definitely think maybe not full ELT or admin needs to be there, but I'd let the city manager weigh in on that. Definitely your city manager, probably your CFO, and a couple others need to be there, even if it's just for notes. But I think that would be something that the city manager would probably likely weigh in on who he feels is appropriate.
Okay, so that would be included under processes. So that would be a
Yes.
decision that could be made there, and it kind of covers it.
Perfect.
Okay, so that is your motion, Councillor Carlson. If you want, I think you've already spoken to it, or if you want to call the question.
I've spoken to it. I think it's, let's throw it to our colleagues and see if the bulk of them agree that it would be beneficial.
Okay, anyone wish to speak to this for debate, or do we go to the vote? Okay, question's been called. All in favor? And that goes forward unanimously.
Perfect, thank you.
We go to the last one, and this one is here mostly because sometimes my memory is awesome, especially if you want to know who died on a certain date, but other times it's not so good. So I put it on the agenda to remind myself. Normally, we would do the city manager performance in September, October, but we promised that we would get it done before the election so that it could be handed over to the new council as here is the year, it is complete. And so that means if we are going to have it complete, we need to get onto it now and have sort of the paperwork back to Chair of Governance, myself, by the end of July. It hasn't changed. It is the same policy. The forms to fill out are under the policy. I will also be emailing it out, but this is simply a reminder. Check your emails. This is coming. And please make sure we get the city manager performance in. Same process. It's compiled. It's sent to the mayor and deputy mayor. They sit down with the city manager. When everybody is happy, we check it off that, hey, we did it for another year, and we use it as a way of moving forward in general. Again, I don't see any members of the public to speak to this, but if there are any questions, members of council, go ahead, Councillor Middleton Hope.
Thank you, Councillor Crowson, and thank you for quarterbacking this, to utilize a football metaphor. My concern arises from the lack of input from a portion of council. It's pretty important, and I am not quite sure how we can overstress the importance of all council members actively participating in this. I think we had 4 or 5 last time, as opposed
I think
to
we had
all.
7 last time. I think 7 people did it.
Well, that was according to the deputy city clerk. So I'll throw him under the bus.
I don't think he gets to see it at all. He sees none of this.
So 7?
Yeah.
7 out of 9? Good. I think we just need to reinforce the importance of it.
Yes. This is when I feel more like a teacher than any other part of this job, is when I have to go after all of you for your homework for an entire month. But I will be relentless. This has to be done. It is our requirement to do it. And so, yes, you are told now that you have until the end of July to get your forms in.
Good.
Yeah.
And when will they be made available?
You actually have it right here on the agenda, because all you have to do is download the policy and the forms are in there.
Good. Thank you.
I will also email them out, but you already have access to them because it is simply in the policy.
Okay.
All right. That, I guess I have to make a motion here. Be resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee accept this as a reminder. It's not really information. Please just do your homework, everybody. Can that be a motion? Do your homework? I guess the real motion would be as accept as information. Okay. All right. And since this is coming from the chair, I will move this. I don't know if there's any debate on it. All right. All in favor? That is carried, and the meeting is done. Thank you all. Can we have a gavel? Yeah. Governance is done for the day and for the month of June.